So we are recording and ready to roll.
All set? All right. This meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the January 13th, 2020 meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 7 p.m. I'm Narissa Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Maureen?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Lees?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Linda's not going to be able to make it tonight, unfortunately. Paul Mayette? Oh, he's muted.
I'm here and I can hear you.
There you go. Thank you. And Tina also is unfortunately not going to be able to make it tonight. So, and Kaylee?
Here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Triton Superintendent Brian Forget.
Here and I can hear you.
Sorry, my dog's having a sneezing fit. Assistant Superintendent Kim Croto.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. School Business Official Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Special Education Director David McGee. Did I see David on the list?
I do not see him yet.
Okay. All right. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast will be captured by the recording. All right, so this is the January 13th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee. So we've called the meeting to order. I'm going to keep my remarks short tonight so that we can go straight into the agenda. This is our traditional business meeting for January. We did move this 1 week later. We are missing 2 members tonight, both of whom send their regrets. That would be Linda and Tina. And I just wanted to remind folks to please mind their manners on the Zoom meeting, and we will mute or shut off video cameras if we have to, if it begins to get disruptive. And with that, I'm going to move straight into oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so, either by raising your hand on your video call or using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. I'm just going to quickly read aloud the public comment language. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during the public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the chairperson. I'm going to extend that to 30 minutes tonight if we need to, similar to the way that I have in the past public comments. And in case anybody hasn't gone through this before in a previous meeting, it is a 3-minute time. If when you hit the 2-minute mark, I'll give you a 1 minute to let you know that you have a minute left on your time. And when you hit the 2-minute and 30-second mark, so that you have 30 seconds left, I'll give you the cutoff sign to let you know that you need to be reaching the end of your remarks, and we'll cut you off if you end up at passing the 3-minute mark. So that said, hang on, we have a few people hanging out in the waiting room. Coming in. All right, so if you'd like to address the committee in public comment, please use the raise hand option or raise your hand on your video call. I see one. Jackie, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And you should be unmuted and ready to go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jackie Lees, and my son PJ is a senior who's learning remotely. I hope everyone listening tonight has heard the crazy numbers from our own state and across the nation, and heard the news that there's an even more contagious variation of the virus running around. Today I read that as of yesterday, the United States had 22.7 million COVID cases and 3,000 people a day are dying. 2.3 million of those cases are kids, according to the states which report to the American Academy of Pediatrics. And just last week, there were 171,000 cases among children ages 0 to 19. In Massachusetts, we've averaged over 6,000 cases a day for the last several days, and the positivity rate is 7.45%. Here in Massachusetts, over the last 14 days, we've had 59,000 cases. 10,220 of those cases are kids the ages 0 to 19. That represents 17.5% of all the Massachusetts cases in the last 2 weeks. And here in our district, we've had 160 cases in our district in the last 14 days. And our positivity rate in our district is actually higher than the state average. Rowley's rate is 7.67, Newbury is 6.7, and Salisbury is 10.6. When you average all of that, it's 8.14. And in our schools, according to our own Triton dashboard, there have been 82 cases since September, but 37 of those cases have occurred since Christmas. We are on the upswing. We're trending in the incorrect direction. And today I read, according to the Harvard Medical School, that published a study that it shows that kids who are infected carry the same viral load that adults do. And that raises concerns in their minds that kids transmit the virus just like adults do. And CNBC published another article based upon a study conducted at London's Queen Mary University, which stated that kids who attend school play an important role in community transmission. There's also a Swiss study that's been published by the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, and they tracked 1.5 billion people's movements during the pandemic shutdown. And they concluded that when schools were closed, kids stayed home, which forced parents and caregivers to stay home, and therefore there was less transmission. And in fact, it was cut by 21%. All of this scares the daylights out of me for the health of our district and our families and our staff. We're all seeing the light at the end of the tunnel because of the vaccine rollout. I think the goal here is to keep our district families healthy, our elders alive, and our staff healthy and alive so that we could all be alive to be vaccinated. Therefore, I urge you to take the unpopular position and remain in the remote model until either community transmission is controlled or the vaccine is rolled out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mary is next. Ooh, sorry, my participants list is jumping all around, but I think that should unmute you, Mary, or ask you to unmute.
There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So I have a different point of view from Jackie, who just spoke. And it's kind of funny. If everything that was just said was 100% true, then we're in remote. Our cases should be way down. But they're not, because parents and caregivers are at home. So if those statements hold water and are 100% accurate, then we should have zero transmission in these 3 towns. And that's not the case. So the information on the dashboard, I looked last week and this week, I actually saw a downward trend. The numbers aren't published until tomorrow, so I can't confirm that. And I don't have statistical information as much as the lady who spoke prior to me. I'm obviously a parent who would like full in person. However, I do believe that the hybrid model is something that our children are yearning for and need at this point in time. If there's a motion, I hope that it will, the vote will go to stay or to move prior into a in-person hybrid for the district and not to stay remote. I hope that the 2 missing members and the way that the vote tallies, I think, Narissa, you and I had a small correspondence on that. um, does not impact a vote for in-person learning. I think that the children need it. I think that the parents need it. And it's a virus. There's a spread, and we're taking all the precautions in our homes and in our schools that we possibly can. And if the superintendent and the healthcare providers within the school deem that it's safe, I think we should go with that. Actually, I don't think it, I know it, and that's what we should do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I do not see anyone else in the public comment. Oh, I do. Hang on a second. I'm assuming this is Martha. Hang on. Should ask you to unmute.
Hi, you'll have to forgive me. I'm watching the boys basketball game at the same time that I'm on the school committee meeting. I really just, the kids need to go back. The numbers are down. I'm going to be really blunt. The overall numbers in the community are not an issue to me. I'm just going to say that. That is not an issue because the overall numbers are not our local. They're not the kids in school. In my opinion, that's a moot point. I get that there's issues all over the country, all over the world, but we're talking about Triton Regional School District. And the trend in our district right now is a downward trend based on looking at the dashboard, based on looking at a bunch of other things. These kids need to go back to school. I'm going to be this blunt. There's all kinds of much larger districts now moving to go back. The bottom line is if the staffing is there, which I understood and I respect that there was an issue with some staffing issues. If the staffing is there, these kids deserve to go back in a hybrid model, and that should be starting based on the agreement on January 20th. So my hope is that that is what we are doing. At the end of the day, I think they're ready and they're doing everything they can. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else want to raise their hand? Sorry, I'm doing a quick scroll through just to see if there is anybody with a video on.
I don't see anyone else.
I don't see anybody else either. Okay. Oh, hang on, Shauna McGee. Should ask you to unmute, Shauna.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. My name is Shauna McGee. I'm the parent of 3 students in the Triton district, 1 at the middle school, 2 at Newbury Elementary School, and I'm also a teacher in the district. I think the frustration that so many people have here is that when we really are realistic about this, we have narrowly escaped having our children not in school at all in person this year, right? If it wasn't for a revisit of a vote, our kids would have been full remote all year. And that's frustrating because it feels like the right, what I believe is a right that our kids have to in-person learning is not being seen as a basic human right by the committee, as reflected in the votes. So I would just ask that we revisit our view on what education is. It is a right of our children to in-person education, and we treat it as such. There are many schools, as I think Martha kind of alluded to, that have a lot higher numbers in school than we do, and those kids are still in school, and they're doing okay. My sister, my niece and nephew go to school in Kingston. They've had well over 100 cases in their elementary school, but they're still in a hybrid model and they're doing okay. And the comment about, well, if kids stayed home, then parents would have to stay home and take care of them. And then that would make the numbers go down. Well, that's just not the case. Many, many parents cannot stay home and take care of their kids. And so what happens is that kids have to be put in daycare situations, or elderly relatives have to take care of them, which is not good for community spread at all. In fact, I would argue it's much worse than having our kids in a safe environment like the schools are. So please remember that in-person education is a right. It should not be taken away unless it absolutely has to be. I understand the staffing issues, and I would ask that those be treated individually, I guess. So if the high school is having a staffing issue, then close the high school down until the staffing improves, but keep the other schools open if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else that would like to speak? Jacob, hang on a second. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Should be good to go. Should be.
It's unmuted.
Yeah. All right, anyone else who would like to speak? Victoria, looks like. Ooh. All right, Victoria, you should be seeing a prompt to unmute. Victoria, you should be unmuted. Also not getting any audio. All right, anyone else?
I just readmitted Jacob for, so I don't know if he tried to log back in again.
Okay. No, sometimes
Can
people
you
have
guys hear me?
audio.
I think it works now.
Ah, there you go.
I'm so sorry. I kept pressing the unmute button, but for some reason it wouldn't work, and I couldn't chat, so I couldn't get my tell you guys. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
But my name's Jacob Forrest. I am a senior at the high school, and my personal opinion would be to stay in the remote model that we're currently in. The reason I would say that is just because, you look at the numbers that we get every day, 6,000 cases a day, 5,000 cases a day, just in Mass alone. And while that may be the numbers for an entire state, Essex County is one of the highest numbers of counties, highest number of cases counties in the entire state. And to further that, I guess I would say is it seems like every day I'm getting an email that there's another COVID case in the school community, another email of this, that happens every single day. And I know personally I wouldn't feel safe going back. And speaking on behalf of my peers, I can tell you that some of them don't feel safe either, as well as parents. I mean, we're all trying to do our best here, and trust me, no one wants to go back to school as badly as as me. But when it comes to the end, it's about safety. And I think to play it safe during a pandemic is what's most important. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll try Victoria one more time. She's still got her hand up.
Can you guys
Victoria?
hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Usually I let a lot of other parents do the talking. I think everyone's done a great job advocating for the kids on both sides. As a healthcare provider, I completely understand all sides of this. I badly want my kids to go back, but I understand that we're also in the middle of a pandemic and trying to take things seriously and be cautious with the kids, the teachers, and everybody involved. I do feel like at this point, it would be beneficial to let the kids go back. Sorry, that was an echo. I have a high needs learner who's in school right now in the middle school, and I also get the emails every day that just like the other parents do, but my child has come home every day and feels completely safe being in school. Actually, he tells me he feels safer being in school than being in some other public places that we have been. We are taking precautions just like everybody else is everywhere we go, but we are also leaving our house. So it's tough to know that the kids can leave the house, and go to the store or, go to a sporting event or wherever they're going, but they're not going to school. The school is doing a great job of, providing hand sanitizer, making the kids wash their hands. I'm sure they're doing the same at all the schools. Kids are wearing masks. They're being compliant. They're doing what they need to do. And I'm sure all the kids that are there are happy that they're there. I know my kid is happy that he's there. And I think at this point, I I understand if parents don't want to send their kids back, but there is the remote option for those parents and those kids. I think at this point, it would be beneficial to allow those parents who do want their kids to go back or need their kids to go back, because some parents have to work. So it's hard. They don't have a daycare situation. Maybe these kids are home alone. Everybody's in a different situation. So if we could at least allow parents the option to send their kids back in a hybrid model, I do think at this point it would be beneficial for everybody. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Last chance. Just scroll the video screens. All right, I don't see any more. Okay. So we'll end public comments. Moving on to the consent agenda, I'm going to read aloud the donations. Yeah, there. The donations for this month include a monetary donation of $10,000 from Jack and Gwen Foley in honor of former 4th grade teacher, Miss Sandy Foley. Monies are to be spent on Salisbury Elementary students at the discretion of the principal. And a monetary donation of $900 from the Salisbury Elementary PTA. This donation will go toward personalized reusable face masks. So thank you for those donations. Can I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Maureen. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Paul. All right, any discussion on this? Anything that needs to be pulled? All right, seeing none, I need a roll call vote, please. Erin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Caitlin? Yes. So yes, Caitlin?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Paul Lees?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well. All right. So moving on in the agenda, the next item is the student advisory report. So Kaylee, there you are.
Hi. So we actually heard from Jacob a few minutes ago, and what he said is honestly what I've been hearing throughout the halls from the majority. The school is obviously split, especially now that we're back online. There are so many students that are saying they desperately want to be in school learning, and they miss every single thing that they used to be able to beforehand. But at the same time, every single day the cases are it feels to them as though the cases are going up, and they're not so sure how safe it will be. They also, time and time again, state that the remote plan given to the high school isn't a viable option in comparison to actual school. And the way that it works right now for the majority of high schoolers when we're fully remote is everyone is online all at the same time. We're able to have class discussions. We're able to ask the questions we need. Versus when we're in person, there's this enormous split between when the teacher is talking to the people in class as opposed to talking to those back at home. Sometimes you don't even get the instruction back at home. And it's not comparable to everything that's going on. And yes, everyone says that they want to go back to the way the world was, but we need to figure out how to work on what the future of education is going to look like, not what the past of education looked like. So I think that we need to figure out how to do it safely in a way that all of the students that are going to feel comfortable. That's what I'm hearing from all of the students that are comfortable reaching out. It's a story that's being told throughout. Everyone's really excited that sports are starting again and activities are starting up and clubs are reaching out and things are happening. But everyone is so terrified that once we're back in person, these lifelines that they currently have are going to be stripped away. Right now, it's safe to go and see people, friends distantly outside of school in the afternoons. Once we're in class all day long with that many people, no one feels safe and comfortable doing it. We're exposing ourselves in order to get an education, and it's the same thing, but there's ways that we can see people now, and there's ways that we can get an education now that feel safe to more students, instead of when we're in the building and we sit directly next to the student that we know they were at the party last weekend and weren't wearing masks. So it's this whole catch-22 where everyone desperately wants to be in school and getting their education and seeing their friends and being able to have all of the events that we could have beforehand. But we also want to be able to be healthy enough to get our education and being there to receive one. That's what everyone's saying right now.
Thanks, Kaylee. Any questions for Kaylee? Seeing none. All right. Thank you very much, Kaylee. Next item is new business. Do any members have new business that they'd like to raise? All right, seeing none again, I will move on to the data review group update. So I think everyone is probably well aware of this at this point, that that the committee has not been needing to review everything weekly because there's a data review group that that instead meets weekly and goes through a lot of the data that's available on the dashboard, and there are conversations that are going on with local representatives, health agents, school nurses, that type of thing as part of that group. So, so that group met yesterday afternoon. We were a little bit late this week, in part because of a miscommunication and in part because the state moved to its new interactive dashboard, and things got a little bit interesting when they put out the weekly data on Wednesday. They didn't initially publish it where it's been published in the past, and then when they updated those reports, there were two different sets of data. So it took a little while to kind of figure that out and make sure that we had data solid so that we would be able to meet with the data review group. So so the dashboard is updated with the most recent data that's available, including school cases and the correct town case information, contact tracing information, all that from what came out from the state last week. I'm going to provide you kind of a quick summary of what was raised at the data review group meeting, and Maureen also attends that meeting, Brian attends that meeting, and Kim made, I don't know, half an hour of it, I would say, this week. So she was there for the beginning of that meeting. So a couple of things, I kind of divided this so that it wasn't chronological, because we tend to bounce around subjects when we're talking there. But in regard to school cases, there were concerns about school cases raised by the school nurses about increases that they're seeing in school cases. In regard to both school cases and town cases, one of the things that health agents and contact tracers seem to be united on is that they are still seeing results from Christmas celebrations at this point in that data that's there. One of the things that they specifically noted was that the pattern of the way that cases are showing up has changed. That previously they would see, you know, kind of that a point of where COVID started within a household, and then as this Christmas cases started coming through, what they saw instead was that within a very short period of time, an entire household or an entire family would test positive. So it wasn't kind of this progressive process of, you know, one person testing and then other people in the household contracting COVID. It was literally like, I think one of them was said, you know, you could have an entire family of 5, and that family of 5, all 5 of them were testing positive in, you know, just a couple of days, a very short period of time. So that's something that they noted. They're still seeing those come through. They have not seen the patterns, a move in kind of that pattern away from that yet. They believe that New Year's celebrations would look different in the way that it shows up in positive cases, and they haven't seen a trend in that direction yet. So that's kind of their take. We did explore a little, like, what do they expect to see down the road? And there's a lot of unknowns here. You know, it's they couldn't provide any solid, I guess, idea of what they expect to see in the future. They just sort of know where we're at right now and what they're seeing right now. They did indicate that there are some struggles with contact tracing right now, that the cases are coming in very quickly. They've moved from sort of handling contact or handling case by case sort of process to moving toward a sort of triaging. So I know her name has been mentioned here often, but Kristen is basically going through all of the cases very quickly to try and identify where there are school connections in those and bring those to light quickly to allow us to react. That's something that they didn't have to do in the past because the pace of the cases was slower in previous weeks. They are hiring one additional full-time contact tracer and bringing that person on board because there is an increasing cases there. The town health agents that were on said that while there were a dip in the town cases last week, they do not expect that to last. They expect, so the town data and the state data, just by nature, is always a little bit different based on when they collect it. But they expect to see the town number of cases tick back up, probably very likely in this Thursday's report. We did spend some time talking about vaccine as well. The staff are all in the middle of phase 2 for a vaccine rollout. The towns do not have any knowledge, or any of the health officials did not have any knowledge at this point of kind of how that might be handled down the road. They're still in the middle of phase 1. The town health agents are right now managing kind of their first regional rollout, which is for first responders. They're doing that as an 8-town effort to vaccinate about 700 first responders over 3 different vaccination clinics. So their take on that was that that if it ends up being another regional effort, they've kind of got this under their belt. They're working out any kinks, any problems with these earlier phases of the vaccine rollout where there are smaller numbers of individuals to be vaccinated. And that if they were in a situation where they would be handling vaccinations regionally down the road, they would have experience under their belt and some training already put in order to be able to help with that. But that will not likely be for, you know, a while. So, and that was all my notes from it. I don't know if Maureen or Brian had anything, or Kim from the very beginning, that they wanted to chime in, and I'm going to let Brian and Kim, or Brian, express his opinions in that meeting as well. But I'll let him kind of say his piece on his own here since he's here. Did you have anything else that I missed there, Brian? I tried to go through all my notes from.
I say by way of summary, no, I don't believe. I think you hit everything.
Okay.
I think I don't know if Maureen wants to clarify any. Is that?
No, I agree. I think Narissa provided a very accurate summary of what was discussed yesterday. So I don't have anything to add.
All right. Thanks, Maureen. Brian, did you want to kind of give your side of this?
Yeah.
I don't know how to put that better.
Side of things. I mean, same thing I shared with the working group yesterday, or the data review group yesterday. I don't like any of the options. right? I mean, I think the data is absolutely not something I like looking at, right? The cases, I mean, we have not seen a spike in the schools. We certainly have seen that steady climb since the holidays. The majority of the cases that we had very few close contacts. The last several, over the past several days, did have close contacts. That totally depends, right? When we're all in school, it's totally dependent on whether it's a student or a staff member who's diagnosed, and where they are in the grade levels and what their role is. There are certainly cases over the period where we've been in remote, where if we had been in hybrid model, there likely would be some close contacts. And then there are many cases where the process worked and the family had suspected, or the staff member had suspected that they had been a close contact, or had suspected that they might be potentially moving towards a diagnosis and remained out. And so they would not have had close contacts even if we were in a normal full hybrid model. So I stand square in the middle, not knowing which is the best option, but I fall on the side of, we don't know what will happen unless we have, as far as cases in schools and transmission in school, we have largely not had transmission in school, right? There have been cases I've reported to you, but someone mentioned earlier, these are largely cases that are happening through families, through close contacts, cases through organized sports. And so where those cases have happened, there are certainly impacts within the school, but that does not mean that there's transmission within the school. So I think the words I used were, if not now, when, because I feel like at this point, the numbers aren't going to be good for a long time. I would venture to guess. And with that in mind, I think when I look at the detriment for many students, and what remote means for them, I have a hard time suggesting that we don't shift back to remote. So at this point in time, I feel like the moving forward with the plan, right? So no action tonight moves us back to hybrid on the 20th, as was originally planned. That does give parents the option, right? There are the options for the remote academy. I know several have mentioned it at the high school level. It is not ideal. I mean, none of us would sit around it's not a table, but the screen here and say that it's the best option. But within the resources we had and currently have, we don't have another option, but it is an option. And so I feel like the best path forward is to shift back to hybrid and adjust accordingly. I've said this several times before. The easiest thing is to have the committee make the decision and keep us in remote. And then it keeps the decision off of my shoulders. But ultimately, I believe what the right thing to do is that we open the schools, and I have to continue to work with the principals and the school nurses to adjust as the cases arise. When it's a grade level, when it's a classroom, when it's a sports team, if it's a whole school, shifting and responding to the case counts rather than what we think might be coming down the road, I believe is the right way to go.
Thanks, Brian. Kim, did you want to add anything? I know you unfortunately had to duck out before the end of the.
I would just say
conflict.
I support what Brian said, then that would be my position as well.
All right, short and sweet. Thank you. All right, I will open it to the committee then for discussion on lease. That was quick.
Brian, I just want to again ask.
We lost your audio, Paul. We lost your audio, Paul. Can you just start from the beginning?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I just want to ask again, Brian, like I did in the last meeting, can you give us an update on how the staffing is going at the schools?
Yep. I don't have an exact number for you, but it depends on the school and the day, right? That literally changes day to day. But as of right now, or last time I talked with the principals, as of, within this week, the discussion was we are ready, right? Staffing is better. We definitely did see when we had the decision I can't remember dates, but when we decided to prolong the remote from the 4th of January to the 20th, with concerns about staffing, that was real, right? So certainly coming back from the holidays, there was certainly, we would have had in the majority of schools, it would have been a challenge to open the schools. But as of right now, I would say for the middle school, right, that was a school that was struggling with staffing, and they have a more complete staff right now than they have pretty much the entire fall. So as of right now, we are in a much better place with staffing and prepared to reopen in a hybrid model on Wednesday, the 20th. Again, that's a week out, right? And things can change quickly, but as of right now, we are good to go.
Any other questions, Paul? That's it. All right. Anyone else? Or who else, I should say? Maureen?
Brian, just quickly, has the substitute pool improved at all, or has it gotten more challenging?
I would not call it, with Kim, you wouldn't call it a drastic improvement, no. I mean, there definitely are, we
Like
have
2 or 3 more.
So I guess in the grand scheme, that's a drastic improvement.
That's an improvement.
But yeah, so it has gotten better. It has not gotten drastically better. But there are absolutely, there are actually some other, on any year, staffing is a constant ebb and flow, right? There are leaves, maternity leaves, medical leaves, you name it. There are leaves for various reasons. So we have all the normal leaves plus these added, the complications of leaves and needs for this year. But there are definitely, over the coming weeks, there are some other transitions that are helping as well. That one leave is going to start and another is going to end. And so a sub can, transfer over and stuff. So it currently is not any worse than it was. A slight bit better. But 3 subs shared across, 425 employees, or call it roughly 275, 300 educators is certainly not a good ratio.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Or we can move on to comments too. Erin, I think you can unmute yourself. Yep.
So Brian, do you have a sense for how the staff feels about the hybrid versus remote? I know that we received a bunch of emails over the last couple of weeks expressing some concern. I'm curious to know. I know that you say that they're ready, as in they're physically able to be in the school, but how are they mentally?
Yep. So we, and Kim will touch upon it briefly, but we did a faculty and staff survey. I'm going to say December. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was just before the holidays. And so we had a very good response on that. That data is not something that we're ready to share publicly, but it certainly gave us a good take on where people are at. And absolutely, everyone is stressed and struggling, and this is a challenge. But it was a fairly strong split with a slight edge toward hybrid. Without the data set in front of me, like it has been all along, everyone's split. There are those who feel like we should be staying in remote. There are those who feel like we should be back full in person. And the vast majority are on either side of that decision. There aren't a whole lot of people who are squarely in the bring it on, we're ready to roll. And then there are those, way to the we need to stay fully remote. The vast majority of people are right in the middle. And, depending on the situation and depending on the day, it fluctuates back and forth, but the staff are struggling, right? Everyone is in their role when they're working face-to-face with students. It is a considerable challenge. And so folks are concerned with their own safety, obviously. And so, it's incumbent on us, if we're asking people to be in, which the majority of staff are in now, with those high priority students being in the building, that we remain vigilant with all of our precautions and protocols to make sure that we're keeping them safe.
Did that answer your question, Erin? Okay. Other questions?
Can I add one thing? I think it was something just in regards to the staffing. So that, I would say, I think we've said it all along, but that's the one thing that remains incredibly volatile. So that is something that could literally shift on a moment's notice. So if it's again, it can shift a grade level to remote, and that's easy enough to accommodate. But staffing will continue to be volatile, just to make sure that that's out there, that we're good right now, better than we were, but it's certainly something that can change up.
All right. Any other questions? Can we move on to discussion, and we can come back to questions if we want to? I'd like to hear from committee members where you're at, what you're thinking. Anybody? Lots of silence. Come on, Maureen. Not going first this time.
I didn't want to go first. I'm curious to know.
Oh, Caitlin's going to save you.
Caitlin.
I agree with Brian. You don't know where the road's going to lead you until you start going down it. And I share a lot of concern about the virus and the uptick, and I'm not ignoring that data as a whole, but I think we've asked a lot of our parents to take care of their students and be on board with their learning, and we keep asking them. And at some point we need to get kids back in the building, and we need our protocols, when tested, have worked. And I think they will continue to work. And I think we need eyes on kids now in January, February, March, when things get a little tougher at home, when things get a little bit dicier for parents. And childcare, I've seen a lot of childcare options close because they're not making the money. And that's kind of closing doors on parents. And so they're relying on friends and neighbors and elderly in-laws and whatnot. And I think we're causing a bigger problem with community spread by closing at this point. In a week, I may look at the data and see it a little differently, but in this moment, looking at what we have now, there are a lot of families that are relying on family members that aren't the healthiest because they're out of options. And there are a lot of students struggling academically. So no matter how I kind of look at it on my seesaw, if I look at the academics, there are a lot of students that really just need to be in the building. They need to see that teacher. They need to hear other students speak. And if I look at it from a safety standpoint, the virus is here. We've got a long way to go on it, but there are other safety concerns. And I think we need to address them to help our students. So I would say, I would hope that we could kind of reopen on January 20th and put eyes on our students and help our families out physically. That's where I'm at right now.
All right, thank you. Paul, Lise, sorry.
I actually had a question about staff. And so Brian, my question is of the teachers that we've had, or I should say staff members that we've have had in the buildings, are there any that have come down with COVID and have not returned to their role?
No, I don't believe. Kyle, personnel, right? No.
So they've all come back essentially?
Yep, and there are those several staff members who were diagnosed with COVID and have returned, right? And there were those who went out and were symptomatic and, had very serious symptoms and are back. And there are those who were out and quarantined and never had a symptom and were back. But no, there's no one who went out and remained out. No.
Thank you.
And to my knowledge, I would just confirm too, I don't believe any student either.
All right, who's next? Best part about being chair is being the one who goes last. Automatic default last, unless I have to wait in here. Erin, I think yeah.
So I'm really conflicted. I'm really conflicted with the concerns voiced from the students about not feeling safe and about different aspects of their education that they feel are working and that are that they're not that they're feeling that they need some more from. I'm concerned that I'm very concerned that we are not supporting our staff enough. That you know, it takes an emotional toll on them, and it's really difficult to continue to see what's going on around them and have that impact on them. So I know that you, Brian, said that you took the survey in December. I wonder how different a survey would be if they were polled more recently, after the fact that the way that the numbers have been going since we had to go out. I still am concerned that the numbers are high, and I think that they would be higher if we were in school. So I do respect and I do understand that the ideal place for kids to learn is in the school. But I still do worry safety wise whether or not we're putting them into a position that's going to cause more harm. And that's where I'm at.
All right. Thanks, Erin. Who else? Paul Goldner. Oh, there you go.
This, what Kaylee said earlier about sports and clubs at the high school seems to me, from what I've seen as well, where the high school kids are getting their emotional well-being right now is not necessarily from being in school. It's from doing all of the other things associated with school as much as they can. I know that at the younger grade levels, in particular, being in school or not being in school is having a much different impact on the education than it is for many of the high school students and middle school students. And, you know, I'm looking, you know, what Kaylee said about people being afraid to go in school is a real, you know, sort of emotional end of the discussion that we kind of have, but we think about what's the emotion, you know, what's the emotional trauma from being home, but the emotional trauma from being in school, particularly with the older kids who are more aware of what's going on, and who are, in a developmental standpoint, more inclined to be not rule followers, is something that concerns me as well. You know, I see the 7-year-olds masking and following rules really well when I see 14-year-olds walking around with the mask on their chin when they're doing athletics or hanging out with their friends, and that's also concerning. I think, you know, I mean, I look at the health metrics and I see, yeah, we're declining right now in our towns, and we've also been remote for a while, and that's, I don't think, coincidental. And people also, it's emotional trauma when your grandparent gets sick. And I think schools being open or closed plays a factor in that as well. That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Paul. All right. Who's Paul Matt?
So I've been thinking about this quite a bit since you emailed today that we'd be discussing it. I hate that we're here again. I hate what this means for families, for students, for teachers, families not knowing, do I need to find childcare on Tuesday? Teachers not knowing what their lesson plans look like as we're here on Wednesday night. And I hate the toll that that's taking on the community. If I look at this, I look at my kids. If they were the only consideration, I think I might feel differently. I see how it affects them, and it's hard on them. It's definitely hard. But I also feel that we don't have that luxury of just looking in one spot. We need to look out broader than that. And it's hard because there are so many different ways to interpret the data. So many situations where I've disagreed with people who I respect greatly. what I've been looking at, and it's something, Paul somewhat just alluded to, are the seems an increase in studies showing some correlation between schools and driving community spread. One out of Michigan, where we would be well over the threshold that the study found, another where we'd be approaching it, another study that it's actually the Emily Oster study out of Brown University that's been the driver for people going back in, is starting to show teachers testing positive at a higher rate than the surrounding communities. When I look at that, I can't come to the conclusion that it's safe to be open right now. When I see that, the thought of us driving community spread, that phrase to me is the most troubling. So that it's not just a matter of, is there spread within the school, but also, is it doing more detriment to the community? I want to ask people listening right now. I think the hard part is, you guys have been great about communicating with us. I'm going to ask people to communicate with others as well. Governor Baker, our elected reps that have a little more power than we do. We need to get these numbers down. And I just feel like we've been left, I feel like we've been abandoned by people who have the ability to actually make a difference. I feel like we continually are, so many people's hopes are placed on us, and we continually have to disappoint, and it's hard. We continually have disappointed. And I guess I'm kind of all over the place here, but I really do hope that those who've contacted us will contact others as well, because we need these numbers to come down. That's all there is to it, and that has to happen at a higher level than just us. And I guess that's where I'm at right now.
Thanks, Paul. Maureen. I mean, I can go if you want, but.
No, that's okay. I mean, yeah, it's hard. I was at the data meeting, and as Narissa said, and the sort of discussion was so split. No, there's no good answer here. There's no good solution. I agree with everything Caitlin was talking about. We've put a lot on our families, and one of the things we talked about in the review meeting yesterday was just concerns about changing models, what that does to kids as well. So if we did open in a hybrid model and we then had to shift back to remote, and it's not good for them either, the constant back and forth. So we want to, don't want to put our students in that situation. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is here. I'm struggling. I think that we've put the proper systems in place that if we can open on the 20th in a hybrid model, Brian has everything he needs to make the right decisions, and I have complete faith in Brian that he does make those decisions for the best interests of our staff and students. So I don't know. I feel lost right now. I don't know what the right thing is. So.
All right. Thanks, Maureen. Unless you have something you wanted to add, you were kind of hanging out there in the unmute.
No, I'm just, no, I don't have anything more to add at the moment.
Yeah. So I guess I'm the last one. I definitely I think I'm on the same page as Maureen, more so than I expected to be. One of my big concerns was that, you know, I guess we heard from our healthcare folks a couple of weeks ago that that they thought it was best to close due to the impact that the holidays were going to have. And then I heard from them yesterday that that impact is not over, that they don't believe they've seen the end of that impact yet. And that that gave me a big pause on that side. I guess I don't know. That's the one piece that I can't get past. I trust Brian. I respect Brian. I want to follow Brian. He's a superintendent. He does a darn good job. But I feel like we have healthcare professionals that have said that they have concerns. We know that, you know, the healthcare folks in our schools have concerns about the number of school cases. And I guess I keep coming back to the fact that we have had in-school transmission. I'm going to broadly define that as one person giving it to another person inside our schools, that we can definitely say has happened, that was happening, you know, every couple of weeks during the pre-holiday period. And we didn't actually, you know, have that many new cases at that point among the student body, at least not, you know, compared to where we were now, or among the staff. I mean, if you look at the dashboard, it is obvious that those numbers have ticked up a lot. And I think that, you know, if it was happening every couple of weeks prior to the break, it's only going to happen more now, right? It's all about those chances of things happening. It's all about, you know, the moment that a mask slips, or, you know, contact, or whatever, you know, those little times that the precautions aren't enough to give the safeguards that they need to give, and that's when something happens. And when you have more cases in your schools, which we likely will, based on the numbers right now, if we went back in hybrid, you know, it's just increasing the odds that those transmissions are going to become more frequent. And I have concerns about that, because while to some degree I agree with Caitlin that you know, that those are possibly happening outside in other childcare environments too, you know, this would be in our schools, and I'm not sure that outside would be more than what's could potentially happen inside. So, I mean, for me, I could honestly be an abstention vote tonight. I'm leaning toward no. I don't know if we're going to have a vote at all, because, you know, it's going to take somebody to make a motion. I am very, very concerned, though, for what's going to happen. You know, I mean, I just feel like, I guess we've been going through and, you know, you're weighing risk, you know, what's the risk of, you know, mental health on this side versus physical health on that side. And we've been doing that for months, and it's just getting more and more and more intense, I think, because time has gone on. We've spent more time in remote, which, you know, again, can be more isolating. And, you know, at the same time, cases are ticking up. So the physical side is ticking up. So it just feels like the stakes are getting higher and higher the farther we go. And that is very, very difficult. I think the other thing that I struggle with, and I just want to kind of give a nod to this, we've been through this many times, and I don't think it's, you know, there's no fixing anything here, is that people keep saying that there's a choice, and there are a choice for some students. I think, you know, I think from what I've heard, the remote academy, there are students that are being successful in remote academies for, you know, K through 8, or yeah, K through 8 for the students that have opted to go that way. I'm very concerned that that the option at the high school is not seen as a viable option, because I feel like there is no choice there for many of those students and many of those families. And that's a problem for me. And then again, with staff, this is not a choice for them either. They have to be there and they have to be in the buildings. So I'm not sure I can totally buy into this idea that we're just giving people a choice, because there's a good segment of the population that doesn't have a viable option out in this situation, in my mind. So I guess I just have to set that aside. Sorry, Paulise, go ahead, because I don't really have anything else to say. Material.
I had a feeling. So I didn't really voice my thoughts. It's not going to come as a surprise, but I think we need to remain in remote. I think to send the students back in hybrid would send a very wrong message to the staff, because although the staff may have been split in November when the survey was taken, we received a rash of emails from staff members genuinely concerned about their health. And with the numbers being what they are, as reported by my wife and what everyone has seen, I think it's just unfair to send the staff back in light of the numbers. I can't do that with a clear conscience. And so that's where I stand on the issue.
Thanks, Paul. All right. Does anyone else have anything that they want to say? All right. So we're at this point. So the COVID data review group had. Oh, sorry. Did somebody?
Sorry, Narissa, can I ask a question of Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Brian, can you, you've obviously had discussions with the leadership team, the principals and stuff this week, correct? About where they're at in terms of, we can't hear you.
Carolyn Kim-Day, was that Monday or did we met on Friday, right? That was Friday, yeah. So the last full everyone around the table was Friday, and everyone believed that we needed to move forward with returning to hybrid. No one is sitting around the table feeling with pure and unadulterated conviction that there's no risk and we're charging forward without concern. But everyone is literally on that fence and feel like the hybrid model gives the most options.
Okay, thanks.
I should also say, just to clarify, so currently, when we say we're in remote, pre-K, K1 and 2, K is following its kind of reduced schedule, regular schedule. K is in every day, a half a day. And our first and second is following their normal hybrid schedule. Layer on to that, I'm going to say in the vicinity of about 300 high priority kids, probably a little less than that when you take out the 1 and 2 that are in all day now anyway. So call it 250, 275 high priority kids on top of pre-K through 2 that are also in the building daily. So if there's going to be any adjustment, you just need to determine whether that adjusts as well.
So to go back to the beginning of this, I guess, when we were putting this agenda together, the COVID data review group hadn't met yet. One of the main things that come out of there is always, whether they feel like the school committee needs to have additional discussion. Clearly, in this case, they did. There were concerns definitely on the part of, I'm going to call it the healthcare side of that group, about the trends and the cases that they were seeing, and the kind of systems that we have in place right now to address those cases. Having a discussion doesn't mean we need to take a vote tonight. I don't know what the will of the committee is going to be as to taking a vote. If we do not take a vote tonight, then that would have the schools reopening in hybrid on the 20th. And yeah, so that's where we're at right now. I guess, Brian, can I ask one more question, please? Patrick Kelly, the high school principal. I mean, I guess Kaylee voiced it tonight, but she is definitely not the only one who has voiced it in the past or that I've heard from. does Patrick have, concerns, I guess, about academic quality between hybrid and remote, just with the synchronous learning versus a fully synchronous learning and hybrid with students being both in person and remote, depending on their day, and the learning that's happening in a full remote model?
I certainly don't want to speak on his behalf, but I would say that I believe his words would be, if we were in a full remote model where all students are in one place, that's preferred for those who are receiving instruction remotely. However, that doesn't account for the fact for the students who don't learn well remotely, right? And in those cases, then those 2 in-school days are very important. So, so if in an ideal world, if we could make sure that all students, and I, have said this, there's not one profile of student who doesn't learn well remotely. There are students across the ability spectrum, the social emotional, challenge spectrum, high functioning, low function, you name it, across the board. And you take all those and you find a group who works well remotely, and then you find the same mixed group who doesn't work well remotely. So there isn't one grouping or type of student that isn't or is working well remotely. But I would say, yeah, so if in remote, yes, having all the students in one place is absolutely, as an educator, the best option. But in doing that, you're taking out any in-school time. And to date, the discussion has been that there's considerable value in those 2 days of being in school face-to-face.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if anyone wants to make a motion here at this point. So I will say I hate putting the committee in a bad situation, but I personally feel like I need to make a motion here. I can't ignore what we heard from the healthcare side of this. And I think we need to have that conversation or the consideration on the part of all the members as to, where that effect is. I have a hard time with nurses and, health agents and having them saying that we have, concerns about the cases and the health of the students and the staff in your schools. And I feel like not voting in a way disregards those concerns in my mind. So, sorry, Paul, go ahead.
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Take you off the hook. I'll make a motion that we remain in remote until after school vacation.
After school vacation, February?
Yep.
Is that what you're looking at? Sorry, just pulling up a calendar.
That'd be February 22nd would be after.
I was just looking through there. All right. So February 22nd would be the return back, but I'm going to say the 23rd because we would need to accommodate for a professional development day. I'm learning my lessons from the past.
That's 4 more weeks of remote learning.
All right.
May I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't been through this, and if there, I don't know if we put that up for vote first. I would be much more comfortable voting on a much shorter piece. I think we need to remain flexible. So I don't know how I haven't been in a situation yet on the committee where there might be two different possible votes. So I don't know how that works. I'm just putting that out there.
Could we ask for a second first?
I was just going to say, if nobody seconds it, then the motion just essentially fails. There's no second to it and it doesn't go any farther. Somebody could then make another motion if they wanted to and see if they can get a second on that. So either way it goes.
I'll second Polly's motion.
You'll second Polly's motion. Okay.
Can I start the discussion?
Yeah.
And so, you know, what I've heard from Brian and Narissa, obviously what you've said about the medical providers is very, very important. But what, you know, I respect Brian, but what I've heard is in the middle, on the fence, okay? And I just want to raise the phrase err on the side of caution. If Brian as a superintendent came forward and said, we need to return to hybrid, I would give that credence. But when I hear I'm in the middle and I'm on the fence, that doesn't move me.
We need to return. I mean, so when I say that, I believe that we do. I say that very cautiously because I don't want to discount the fact that there are risks involved with it. So I'm decisive, and I believe the right choice is to shift us to hybrid, and then for us to react on a case by case, as we've said, school by school, classroom by classroom, grade level by level, team by team decision, and adjust as we need to. But for the many, many students who, majority of students who don't learn effectively remotely, we do need to return to hybrid. Probably semantics now, given what I had said previously, but.
Any other discussion on this? Paul Mayette?
I understand the appeal of the emotion. Certainly as an educator, it's a lot easier for me when I can plan 4 weeks out and see the arc of a series of lessons and all of that. But I just feel if there is an opportunity, if we see that, you know, this Thursday the numbers are bad and next Thursday they're not, and we have an opportunity to come back, I don't want to shut that out. I don't want to lose out an opportunity to get students back in if we can. I hate going week to week or 2 weeks to 2 weeks. I think it's been terrible for the community and terrible for the committee, terrible for teachers, students, everybody involved. But I also think that this was always going to be the difficult part of going in hybrid, was staying in consistently. And I think that the trade-off for the benefit of having students in the classroom, and I do see the benefit. I was in myself this week, and while I certainly didn't feel safe, I certainly saw some of the advantages of it. But the trade-off for that benefit is the unpredictability. It's a hard thing, but I just don't feel prepared to give that up right now.
Caitlin?
I guess my question is, there is, okay, because I'm muddled, but I think we're missing an opportunity to go back now because we shut down to stay safe after the holidays. There were staffing concerns. There was a lot of definitives. This is the best way to go. They came from the leadership team. They came from Brian. They came from health agents. There were a lot of reasons. So, you know, that last vote, I was like, yes, we should be remote. This vote is a little different, in which a lot more people are saying they're seeing trends, they're seeing this, but they haven't kind of come out and said, yes, we need to be closed. We have the staffing available as of right now. Our leadership team says that this is a good to go moment. And in the same way, Narissa, that you're calling for a vote because it's a slap in the face to the health agents and their point of view, I think the same could be said on the other end. In calling a vote to go remote, it's discounting the people in charge of our schools and in charge of the safety of our children and in charge of their education. And I just want to point out that either way you look at it, you have to discount someone's point of view in order to either have a vote or not.
I don't think that's true though, because if I am not, you know, the way that Brian and Kim are recommending are the default way here. So I'm just saying, if you're considering someone else's point of view, that's part of the consideration, is to say, does there need to be a change? Because the way that Brian and Kim have recommended are the direction we're heading already. So what I'm saying is, do we need to sort of veer off that path? Does that make sense?
It does. I just want to
not slapping anyone.
Not
slapping anyone.
I know you're not. Poor choice of words. I just want to point out that we're kind of going in a direction that is going against what Brian just very specifically stated, that he thinks, and his leadership team, and I'll throw Kim in there too, that opening and continuing on with the plan that we have in place right now for January 20th is cautiously the best way to go.
So while I agree with that, I will also say we're in the middle of a pandemic and this is a health issue and we have to consider the health side, and Brian and Kim aren't the health experts. I mean, that's right.
And I don't discount it. I just, at this point, when I sit on my seesaw that I like to talk about all the time, I have a lot of concerns about some other physical issues that come with it being winter and not having eyes on children and some other health risks. And I'm just trying to, I just can't come to that side right now.
That's fair.
And I want to state, I am not a health expert, right? I'm not offended by that statement because I'm absolutely not. But I just want to reiterate, when we met, whenever it was, December 30th, there was a clear recommendation to say we should stay closed an extra 2 weeks, stay in remote, I should say, an extra 2 weeks. That was not the case yesterday. They're not recommending that we stay remote for any period of time. They expressed considerable caution and concern that we share as well, but I believe it was Frank from Raleigh who said, right, if not now, when, right? The numbers are never going to be to a point where we say, great, we're never, we're some country, right, just completely COVID free, right? So they're relaxing restrictions. It's going to be a long time before we're to the place, I think it was New Zealand, before we're to the place where we're New Zealand and can say, great, we're good, we're coming back confident. So when we make the choice to return to hybrid, the reason I believe now is the time is because it's not going to be good for a long time. And going week over week and turning into months of remote is doing putting huge holes in students' learning and their social and emotional connections and all of that piece that collectively relies on them being face-to-face. So.
Sorry, minor family emergency. So yeah, sorry. Kaylee, go ahead.
Definitely, I do understand that I am completely biased because I am in the situation every single day and I'm in the high school situation. I don't understand what it's like to be an elementary schooler right now. I don't understand what it's like to be a middle schooler. I haven't lived there day to day. But at the same time, in the beginning of the year, we were willing to stay remote when we had no cases in the entire district, when we had the opportunities to be learning outside, we had all the opportunities to be going in strides for when we would ultimately close down when the weather got cold. We knew that we chose to go against that regardless. So I just feel as though we have to say it and say how many lives are actually important to us and how many numbers are acceptable. Because in the beginning, we weren't okay with having even one. And now we're okay with having every single school have at least one case every single day for the last however long it's been. So a part of me is like balks at the hypocrisy that we've put ourselves into. I know that's not the correct wording, but I think we need to think through that. We had the options and now we have so many staff, we have so many students saying that they aren't comfortable. And yes, parents are impacted by how their students are being forced to learn. But they have already been through the education, they have already lived their time in the public education or private education system. The students in the now and the staff in the now are the ones that have to live it day to day. And I think we really need to consider what that day-to-day life looks for everyone.
Thanks, Kaylee. Anyone else? All right, so we've got a motion that's been seconded on the table. And I would, sorry, I have to find my roll call vote sheet. I would just, I guess as part of the discussion, say that I agree with Paul Mayette. I feel like 2 weeks, every 2 weeks is, or going longer than 2 weeks out is definitely not the way to go, that we need to leave the door open. I mean, we can always, could always vote again in between, but I feel like this is too far if we do opt to go remote for longer. So, so all that said, roll call vote. I need Erin.
I just want to echo before I give my vote that I would be supporting of a different time frame. So my vote is no.
Okay. Does anyone else want to discuss? Sorry, I'm just going to do that and then I'll take Erin's. Okay, seeing none. All right, I'm taking your vote as a no, Erin. Paul Goldner.
Yes.
Yes. Maureen.
No.
Is a no. Caitlin.
No.
Is a no. Paul Lees.
Yes.
Is a yes. Paul Mayette.
No.
Is a no. All right, and I'm a no as well. So that motion fails. Again, this can just sit here at this point if you want, and the district would return to hybrid on the 20th, or we can have another motion and have another vote in a different direction. Paul Mayette.
I would move for a continuation of remote for 1 week from the 19th to the 22nd of January, with the return on the 25th. I'm doing that math right?
Yeah, just checking the calendar.
Trying not to count on my hands.
Yeah. No, I'm looking on the calendar.
25th is the Monday.
So we would need to move the transition day to Monday, the 25th.
Yeah.
And return on Tuesday, the 26th.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that Erin?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, trying to keep my notes here so that I can make sure the minutes are good. All right, discussion on this motion.
Can I just ask, this is where we are now is what you're proposing, Paul, is what we have in place now is what we're doing for 1 more week.
All right. No discussion? Not seeing any. All right. I need a roll call vote then.
Kaylee's got her hand up.
Sorry. Who does Kaylee? Sorry, Kaylee.
Well, I just would like to ask if this would be in the 1 week shutdown, but with a meeting next week to reassess what has happened within the week, or if it will be just a direct 1 week, because right now, 1 week information, we won't have much improvement from it. We'll still have relatively similar numbers from what we have right now. We'll either have more cases or less, but we'll still have the same number of students, faculty, community that currently has COVID.
So we would have the new state data from tomorrow. So in the dashboard, at least, the daily data gets updated. So we'd have however many days between now and if this did pass when the next meeting was, of daily numbers. Tomorrow night, the contact tracing percentages for the state and the town numbers would come out. And then obviously the school cases and the school close contacts get updated on a case-by-case basis, or really, I guess in some cases it's a day-by-day basis, depending on, how close those cases are grouped. So anything that came up in the interim would be available for that. And then on Fridays, we usually check in with the contact tracers to update the stoplight for contact tracing and in some cases testing down the bottom. And then Brian updates the school numbers, schools that are remote and classrooms that are remote as well. And I think, is that it? Am I missing anything else? So we'd essentially have one new full set of data, at least on everything. And then on the daily cases, we'd have however many days between, if we met next week, between now and whenever that meeting was. So not considerably more data, I guess, but it would be, more data. So Paul Mayette.
My hope in saying 1 week is that we would see in that week, at the very least, a downtick in school cases that would make us comfortable. And I want maximum flexibility, I think, as much as I don't think any of us want to be here a week from now. I just feel like that gives us the ability to be somewhat more nimble. That was my reasoning for doing that.
Yeah. And I should say, because I don't think it's to be underestimated either, that the COVID data review group would meet in between as well. So that would be kind of the feet on the street, most updated information that would come from folks out of that group too. Any further discussion on this? Questions before we roll call? All right, seeing none, I need a roll call vote. So it'd be Erin.
Yes.
Yes. Paul Goldner. You're muted, I think, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Maureen?
Yes.
All right. Caitlin? You're muted.
Sorry.
There you go. No problem. Sorry, say it again. No? Okay. Paulise?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
All right. And I think I'm a yes as well on this. So that would be 6 yes votes to carry it through. 1 no. So I guess that begs the question, do we actually want to set up a meeting for next week, or do we want to let the COVID data review group meet and make a recommendation as to whether there should be additional discussion? Anybody?
I would be inclined to wait.
Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I'd be inclined to wait to see what the review group says, but I would also put out there that if it came to meeting next week, I don't know if doing it on a Thursday would be feasible, but another night of numbers would be useful if it came to that.
Yeah,
With the hope that it doesn't come to that. Hopefully we don't need to.
I think that's a good point. Kaylee?
Just want to remind everyone that we do have Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. So if we choose to wait until next week and see how contact tracing is going, we'll have that one less day to put forth a report, like put forth the agenda. So to be in compliance with public meeting law.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm hearing a no to meeting unless the COVID data review group signals that they want a meeting. Is that accurate? And if we do meet on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday? Disagreement with that? Anybody saying no?
Can I ask if people will be available like on a Friday at 4 o'clock? I'm just thinking it gives, because often, or 3 o'clock, or I know I'm not going to propose Friday at 7 o'clock, but sometimes the reports are delayed on Thursday nights, and yeah.
They are, although I have concerns with notice for the community. Pushing it to Friday afternoon is, I mean, definitely, I literally saw one come out of, I think, Hamilton Wyndham this afternoon for tomorrow, right? Those are happening, but
yeah, I mean,
I don't think that's ideal.
Thursday night and Friday afternoon is a huge difference. Giving parents a week is ideal, but yeah, just a consideration.
As the one who's been looking at the data every day, they have gotten a lot better about timing. And I'm not willing to give them a lot of credit in a lot of areas right now, but they've gotten much better with the timing.
I was going to say, I think it's got it scheduled because it is literally, I have looked at 458 and it's not there. And I've looked at 501 and it has been there on a lot of these weeks. Although last week they had the funkiness with the data setting that up and they didn't actually get the data that we eventually ended up using up until 7:30, I think, was when it was finally there. But still, I mean, they had, you know, I think that was the first week. And hopefully they have learned from that process. So, Kaylee, go ahead.
My only question is, since we have voted to stay remote for another week, then if we meet on that Friday, well, first of all, are we still having the professional development day on next Tuesday? Or are we pushing it till like the next one? Because if we did meet next Friday, then that would mean that we would have only the weekend to alert families and such that that Monday would be subjectively a professional development day.
Yeah. So that professional development day would move unless I'm incorrect, right, Brian?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, we need to. I don't know. Did the motion make that calendar change as well?
It did not. No, that's something that I had noted.
Mission day. So yes, we would have to do the PD day on the Monday, the 25th, and then return to hybrid on the 26th. And I guess I would just suggest that if you anticipate a meeting, I would schedule the meeting because that gives parents notice. And I think ultimately, you were talking about the committee or the data working group, the data review group making the decision. It's ultimately you and Maureen making the determination of whether you feel the need to call a committee meeting, right?
Right.
We have the discussion. So I think if, depending on what you heard last week or yesterday, you felt compelled to call a meeting. So I don't think it's going to be a whole lot drastically different than what you heard yesterday. So I guess I think if you and Maureen anticipate that you would call a meeting and that's likely, I would do it now, right? I would say schedule it, and then that gives parents the notice that things could change rather than finding out later in the week, last week or next week, and then having it shift. I just think that allows parents to prepare better.
Mm-hmm.
And teachers.
Maureen?
Can I just make a comment about the 26th? If I understand correctly, the juniors are taking PSATs on the 26th. So if I understood the email correctly, that only the students taking that exam would be in the building that day, that all other students would be remote. So
So we would adjust for the high school. So again, that would be a unique caveat that we would adjust for the high school that Patrick would message out. So it basically where cohort A would be in the building and cohort B would be home. Cohort A also stays home, and then all the juniors in the entire building are in to take the PSATs.
Okay.
Oh,
look at that.
It's Patrick Kelly.
He was just
And he's gone.
No, that's correct. So it would just be the juniors there taking PSATs and our high priority students.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks. Does that change anything for you, Maureen?
No,
I wasn't quite sure where
just-
your question was going, I guess.
No, I just wanted to just make sure that I understood that correctly because my junior just signed up for that. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, it just means it's going to be a little different for the high school students. You know, there'll be some that won't return on the 26th.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I guess this comes back to the question of what did Maureen and I think? And I mean, I always wait for those meetings to find out what we're going to hear. I don't know what's going to happen in the meantime, right? I mean, I think, I don't know, you know, I think there were kind of early changes that were in, you know, in the works. Kristen was looking at getting, you know, extra resources. I don't know if that would make her feel better, if she could be, you know, more responsive to, you know, cases as they were coming in. I know she's still, you know, working to be very responsive, but they're kind of out of their comfort zone process that they've been working in all along in order for her to do that because they were coming in so quickly. I don't know what's going to happen with school cases in that time. My hope would be that those would go down because those, especially at, you know, there have been a couple of schools that have been really high and, you know, yeah, they've overall been higher. So my hope would be that those would tail off a bit, but I don't know. Go ahead, Maureen.
I just wanted to say that I think it would be wise to schedule, get it on the books because we can always cancel it if, you know, hope to God that things are moving better and numbers dropping and we can, you know, have that data review meeting and realize that we don't necessarily need to meet, and that would be ideal. I'd rather have the meeting scheduled. It's just easier for planning purposes. So.
Good point. So should we aim for Thursday at 7? Kaylee?
Sorry, that was accidental.
Oh, okay. Extra hands. All right. Is everyone free Thursday at 7? To meet then, we'll put that on the books, and if we need to cancel, we'll cancel. All right. So we're aiming for Thursday at 7. All right. We need to alter the calendar then for that professional development day. So I need a motion to move, sorry, I gotta go back to my calendar. The professional development day from the 20th to the 25th, please.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, now 2 seconds. All right, do I have a second?
Erin.
Erin, okay. Okay, any discussion on this one?
Just wanted to put it out there. We had talked about that cohort A, cohort B inequity when we put that on the 20th. This would swing that back to
yeah, that one
making
cohort
an extra day, that cohort. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if Brian wants to weigh in on this, but I believe the main reason we had looked at that A versus B was because the Monday was basically unavailable.
Yeah, I think it was the timing. Absolutely Monday, because it's already a remote day largely across the district. is far less impact on everyone. So I would propose the Monday, the 25th. And then, I mean, I think the disparity of between cohort A and B likely could shift out over the course of the year with other transitions or where the final day of school lands, all of those things. I think the bigger, ideally, we had spoken all along about Monday's ideal because it's already a day that families are planning for students to be largely remote.
Kaylee?
And then like 1/5 of the district will also have that disparity lessened by that one day because of the 26th with PSATs.
True, not full district, but yeah, it's for that group. Okay, any further discussion on this? All right, so I've got a motion on the table. I need a roll call vote, please. Erin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
All right, and I'm a yes as well. Okay, so that sets the calendar vote. Is there anything else we need to visit on this, Ryan, before we move on?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. So the next item on the agenda is quarantine procedures review of state guidelines. This was Annex 10 in your packet, and I believe the head nurse is joining us for this conversation. Let me just see if she's on the list.
Yes, Tara was going to join. Certainly, she can pop there. She is.
She is. I do see her on the list. Hello. So are you interested? I'm not sure how you guys opted to handle this.
Yeah, I'll tee it up. So it's so this is the document that you have in your packet. It's pages 65 to 101. It's a 22-page document, and it was basically, the title is responding to COVID-19 cases in schools. This is a document that was originally issued back over the summer, and it's been updated periodically. This is the document that notes that where we currently are with our elementary schools in regards to determining close contacts, that we're determining, we're calling a whole classroom for any self-contained classes, close contacts. That was DESE's original recommendation. They adjusted it in this document. We've maintained that for any self-contained classroom that's spending the entire day together, that whole classroom can still be a close contact. But most recently, DPH has adjusted their quarantining guidelines. This is what Tara and the nurses, along with Kristen Jolivet, are dealing with on a daily basis in regards to determining when students, staff, whomever is testing positive, are able to return to the building. So it starts on page 4 and goes to the bottom of page, or almost to the bottom of page 5. The third on page 5, the third bullet, where it's at least 14 days after the last exposure, that was the original recommendation. That was the original guidelines for quarantining. You see the bullet where it says at least 7 days and at least 10 days. That's new guidance. There's a table and further description from, is it CDC or DPH, which talks about the likelihood, certainly the 14 days, there's almost no chance that there's going to be a continued risk of exposure. I think the 10 days, it was something like 99%. The 7 days was something like so. We're having a hard time having different what all of the other what do you call it, the contact tracers, the DPH, CDH, having a different standard of what everyone else is using. So that becomes problematic for Tara and the nurses as they're establishing close contacts and working with the local Department of Health folks. So where we landed, and certainly Tara, feel free to chime in, where we landed was for any of a group that's being quarantined, you can see on the 10 days and the 7 days, it requires some follow-up that becomes very challenging to work with on a large scale basis. So for any whole classrooms, whole grade levels, whole athletic teams, any full groups that are being quarantined or shifted remote, we're going to stick with the 14-day. We did review this actually again with the group yesterday. We then said, okay, individually, the cases for close contacts of individuals that are outside the school or within the school, we said, okay, let's align with the CDC guidelines, the DPH guidelines. Yesterday, both Kristen Jolivet, the lead tracer, and the health agents felt like the 7-day standard was not good. That was a little bit too, I don't know what the right word is, a little too loose, but felt comfortable using the 10-day standard for quarantining in any case where we're dealing with one individual that is going to be tracked by the school nurses. But again, if we're talking about any whole groups, classes, grade levels, we need to stick to the 14 days simply because there's no way to manage all of those because timelines would be different across the board. So Tara, good, bad, add? Did I say anything wrong? Well, we can't hear you.
I'm having trouble with that. Can you hear me?
You garbled for me. We can hear
you hear me?
Now we got you.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a bit delayed, but we can hear you. Yes.
I don't know what's going on with this thing. Yeah, you said everything right.
Okay. So I guess I don't believe there's anything that the committee needs to vote on specifically. I mean, these are guidelines. We're aligning what the state is recommending in consultation with our local health officials. Again, we're still not going to go all the way, if you will, to what DPH is suggesting, simply because of the fact that in working with our local folks on the town side, that they feel like those 7 days is a little too risky still. So,
Questions or comments from the committee on this? Erin?
So I went into the CDC and looked at close contacts, and I'm a little confused because of the way that this is quoted. I didn't read it the same way. It looked like if you were a close contact, that regardless you were supposed to quarantine for the 14 days, but if you had tested positive and fell under certain criteria, then it could have been less. So and I know this right here says in accordance with the federal CDC, is this the local? Is this DESE or the local Department of Public Health that put this together as opposed to the CDC? Because that's where I was confused looking at it.
So this is Department of Ed, an alignment with DPH. That
okay.
That you have is a Department of Ed document quoting and referencing Department of Public Health regulations. So this is based on anyone who's quarantining.
Okay, quarantining because they tested positive.
Quarantining as a close contact.
Close contact.
Yep.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Ah, you're nice and clear now too.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can I just go back? So Brian said that perfectly. Quarantine period would be decreased to 10 unless it was an entire classroom or program or athletic. So yeah.
So I think Erin's question, because I think you probably missed that. Erin's question was in part where that document came from, which Brian, you know, indicated it was a DESE document, but also that this is for close contacts and not cases. Is that correct? So if someone tests positive, it's handled differently from,
Yeah.
Okay.
So when somebody tests positive, it doesn't make logical sense, but their quarantine period or isolation period is actually less. It's only 10 days. So that hasn't changed. Close contacts historically were 14 days. Then they changed it to the 7-day. If you get tested on day 5, you're free on day 7, or you can go 10 days without getting tested and be free on day 11, monitor for 14 days. We're just suggesting changing our quarantine to 10 days unless it encompasses an entire room or program. Does that make sense? But when you're positive, you're always isolating for 10 days. Free on day 11.
Does that make sense, Erin? Does that answer your
So
question?
my confusion was the CDC still says if you're a close contact that it's a 14-day quarantine. I went into it today, and it actually even talks about it for school related programs.
So it's 14 days, their standard. This is allowed. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but there's actually a chart in there, and I was on the CDC, and then it was mimicking what was on DPH, where I mentioned it actually talks about 14 days. It's almost 100% accuracy. The 10 days is a 99% effective, if you will, and then the 7-day standard is like 96%. So that was one of the iterations. Again, I copied for you the the DESE guidance that was updated per DPH protocols, but this is, it may be slightly different than the CDC, but what was referenced and sent to us, and I looked up, it's been a couple weeks now, it did align with what was posted on the CDC. But this is current mass DPH.
So other questions or comments? I don't believe we need to vote on this either. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. My inclination would always be to follow, you know, what the nurses and the contact tracers think is the best option here. I do hope that we will communicate this, because I think this is a question I've gotten frequently, I will say, from parents, just exactly how this works, how long people are required to be out. And I think, you know, every family's making decisions right now. And I think, you know, they've made decisions kind of based on the framework that we've set up. And if we're changing that framework, then that needs to be well communicated. So I just hopefully, in that this is, in some cases, it's going to be a minor change, but I just hope we, you know, we communicate this well out to the community to make sure that everyone's aware of this, so that there are no surprises here. And I think this is not directly to do with this, but I feel like I still need to say this. It was a question and an issue that I had with kind of the testing structure going as far back as we've been talking about it, I think, is that I think this is going to be very easy in some cases for students who are in certain classes of life, shall I say, to be able to access testing in that sort of time frame. And for other students and families, it may be very difficult to do that. And I just struggle, I guess, with the testing structure that has, to my thoughts, some equity issues built in. So no commentary on this at all. That's just kind of, I guess, this goes back to that same issue that I've seen with testing all along, is that there are students who could be back in school sooner simply because of their economic circumstances versus and you know, their family schedules than other students. So.
That is true. And I would say we will absolutely communicate this, but it will always remain confusing.
Mm-hmm.
People automatically start, logically, you think, oh, my clock, my 10-day, 14-day, whatever my clock is, starts when you're notified, right? So when we call home, sometimes, right, we're calling home and saying, hey, we just learned of this. It's 5 days old. So 5 of the 10 days are already gone. So you can come back in 5. Mm-hmm. And so people will see that and say, oh my gosh, they just learned, the student went out, they figure out who it is, and look, they're already back, they're not following the protocol. So absolutely, we will communicate that, but it's just, there's never going to be a perfect science where it's not going to raise questions based on until we have a perfect system where we're testing right away and getting information right away. It's always going to.
Yeah, I think it's more about notice than it is about anything, because just, it's that level of comfort that people have with the precautions that we're taking. And if we're changing those precautions, then then that's something we need to provide ample notification on, not in regard to any individual cases, just in regard to the general parameters that we will be using as a district.
Absolutely.
I think. All right, any other comments or questions on that before we move on?
I just wanted to point out that I did find on the CDC, the option to reduce quarantine is there. And it discusses the 7-day, 10-day, 14-day. So it does, DESE is lining up with CDC's. Wasn't that Aaron's question?
Yeah, that was Aaron's question, I think. Okay. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate you coming on for this. Responding to the feedback from the November surveys, I believe this is this Brian, Kim?
What if Kim? She's still.
All right, Kim.
Muted myself. Okay. So I was asked to give an update based on the survey that was sent out in December, mid-December. So I'm giving you an update. It is absolutely not complete in the sense where we have the leadership team continuing to have talks with professionals and other teachers to address some of the issues. One of the biggest themes that came out of that survey for the students as well as the parents was the social and emotional support and really feeling connected to the school community. So I'm just going to give a kind of just an overview of some of the things that have been implemented since then at each school level. So at the high school level, the leadership team has put together a group of students that will participate in a program called CAP. CAP stands for Center for Academic Progress. And this particular program is temporary, and it's really targeted for some of the students who are struggling with organizational skills or executive functioning components, and they really need to have a short intervention where they're coming into school and they're being provided some tools and some strategies that they then can bring home and begin to start to be more engaged and successful within their classrooms. So, so they're taking about 16 students per I want to say it's maybe 6 to 8 weeks that these sessions run. And if they feel like the student is ready to go back into the remote or the hybrid setting, they are doing that. But I think that the positive well, there's many positive aspects of this, but that they're giving them tools to use so that when they are not in school, that they can access these school tools to be more successful with their learning. And they're also making connections on a daily basis with an adult. They've made changes to advisory. So advisory did fall on a Thursday and Friday, which was at the end of the week. And so the week events have already happened and the educational pieces, that is now been moved to Monday. And they have added some additional flex time available for students to meet with teachers to get additional help. As another option that, or not option, but another program that they are implementing is last year they started lunch groups where Mr. Kelly had an opportunity to meet with students weekly, and he had them during lunchtime, and they had an opportunity to share student concerns with him and other staff. So he is starting that up again so that he can get feedback on a regular basis from students so they don't necessarily have to voice their concerns, through surveys at longer intervals. They have also really taken a deeper dive, sorry, Paul, into the data and unpack that a little bit to analyze really where are some of those academic failings or failures coming in. And that has brought to light some new areas to shine some light on. And looking at the data revealed that the majority of students who are struggling the most are students who came in pre-COVID with C's and D's on their report cards. The students who typically had A's and B's, they saw a much smaller decline in their grade point averages. So really focusing on looking to see what other aspects are involved with that. As far as the fully remote model, looking at that, that's where we saw the biggest decline in academics. There are already a lot of supports in place. We have also included a kind of online English class with direct instruction 3 times a week. That was a content area that students were really struggling with in that remote setting. And so this particular instructor is able to meet with them 3 times a week and go over the assignments and do actually live teaching with the students. And again, really trying to increase the number of opportunities that students have to engage with an adult. And also they created available times for students to connect with other classmates. So in a typical hybrid setting, you might have students who have breakout rooms and discussions where the Florida Virtual School, because of the remote setting, they don't have that opportunity. So internally to create those opportunities to have students reach out to other people in those groups. So those are being introduced as well. That's all at the high school. Any questions about that? I think Patrick is still here, so he could also pop on and share if there's any questions about those programs.
Questions from the committee?
If
I just
not,
had one. I was sorry. Did somebody?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. On the CAP program, is that a substitute for their current class schedule, or is that an augmentation of their current class schedule?
So what we're doing is the students that are in the CAP program, they're non-IEP students typically. So we'll start with that. So we're looking at kind of targeting a different group of students. They're still coming to, and they're now attending in person their classes on their cohort days. And then on their non-cohort days, they're in this CAP, in this room that we're utilizing for the program with with a special educator who's helping provide some of those supports that you would otherwise see in a special education room. As Kim said, we're looking at it as a short-term intervention. If it's something that a student required this type of support always, we'd be obligated under child fine to start going through other processes, but we're utilizing it as an intervention, much like you'd use the district curriculum accommodation plan to try to target and intervene before a student required IEP services. So to your question, Narissa, it's an augmentation of their current schedule. So they're still following their cohort days. When we transition to hybrid, they'll still continue to go to their classes on their hybrid days, but it's a way for us to get them into their classes, into a supported environment where they otherwise wouldn't necessarily have a support on their schedule. So they can get that additional academic support from a educator, and then also have us have eyes on more students that might need that specific support or intervention in the process. So without having a significant impact on I think part of what we're trying to do is make changes without impacting our cohort numbers. So it was a way for us to provide additional support and not impact our cohort numbers.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, go ahead, Kim.
Okay, so at the middle school level, they've introduced some intervention classes, both for students who are in the hybrid, but also for students who are in the remote setting where they're receiving instruction in smaller groups with the reading specialist. They have implemented more social and emotional activities for their G period to address that. The principal and the assistant principals are doing more frequent walkthroughs, checking in with teachers and students. And we have added some additional support, instructional support with the remote classrooms as well to focus in on those academics. They continue to communicate out the safety protocols, not just to staff and students, but to parents as well, to make sure that they have a clear understanding of what they are doing and that they are safe when they come to school, because that was something on the survey where some of the students noticed that they had anxiety because they felt they were nervous that they weren't safe at school. So again, just trying to communicate all of the different protocols that are in place and really making sure that staff and students are following that, which they are. Let's see. At the elementary level, they have started to identify more students who are considered high priority. And I would say that's across all levels as this pandemic rolls on and there's so many other stressors out there beyond the pandemic that we have no control over. They've obviously identified more students who are disengaging for various reasons. And so the number of high priority students have been increased over the last few weeks. At the elementary level, we originally started to track attendance within Aspen. We have switched over to something where we can actually see the students' level of engagement on a regular basis through something that we used. It was similar. It was the attendance tracker last year, and that's been reintroduced at the elementary level. At the district level, we have had Dr. Angela DeSalvo Musso meet with all the leadership teams, and she is a psychologist, and she specializes in educations and adolescence. And she really did a great overview of how students are being impacted by the pandemic and the different stressors that are associated with it. A couple things that really spoke to me about the level of stress that not just students are feeling as well as families is the increase for visits in the emergency rooms for students in the age bracket of 12 to 17 years old. That increased 31%. Since the beginning of April 2020. So, and that's the most recent data that she had. And she said most likely that would have increased significantly. She talked a lot about the inverted U curve too, saying that as students experience stress, their learning capacity decreases. And I believe, you know, we're seeing that with the disengagement and the academic performance. So all of that to say, we really need to still address the social and emotional. And if we try something and it's not working, we continue to work the best we can, but also being sensitive to that. Our teachers are also stressed out, as families are as well. She had a great visual of Starbucks cups, and she had the small and the medium and the large, and just basically saying that through all of this, we all have different amounts of stress that we can handle at any one time until our cup overflows. And so much of what we're doing is we're being reactive to those cups that are already overflowing, and also trying to think about, you know, how do we support those people who have already maxed out their capacity to deal with stress, as opposed to how do we prevent those cups from getting that full. And so, like I said, there are certainly things we can control and there are certain things we can't. But one thing we can is we can educate families and students and teachers about different ways that they can help manage the stress in their life. We have also introduced at the district level that we're really trying to promote is Wellness Mondays. So for teachers, and that's a whole nother survey that we sent out, but the message is teachers are just as stressed as everybody else through this situation, again, for various reasons. And that we're really trying to promote that they take time on that Monday where they have their planning day to whether they go out for a walk. We have healthy snacks in the caf for them to go and grab. We had a knitting club that Sandy here was able to do virtually. You could just sign on for 20 minutes. So we're really trying to model as well as promote that sense of wellness, because they need to step back for a little bit and take care of themselves so that they can better support students. So doing a lot of that to promote wellness across all aspects of the district. We also eliminated midterms and mid-year writing assessments for both. I think that took a huge stress off of the students as well as the teachers. And we're working with the elementary group to do a problem of practice, where we're bringing up some of the problems that they're facing right now and using that collaborative setting to work through that problem and come up with some solutions in really a supportive setting. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have so many things that we need to continue to focus on. And we will. We just need more time and resources, but we are absolutely, working through some of these. And I'm very proud of the leadership team and the teachers for really trying to think outside the box and be creative in addressing the needs in this challenging setting that we're in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Questions from the committee? Paul Goldner?
I appreciate what you're doing, trying to put that focus on the wellness a little bit. I think that's really important. Students, staff, up and down the line. I'm going to pull a little page from Tina's normal playbook here. One of the big stressors, of course, is in a school setting is always, at the high school level, it's SATs and MCAS and AP exams, and down the line, those MCAS tests are always a big stressor for everyone. And I appreciate the state has taken a little bit of the weight off there. I think that's important for everyone, but all of those scores are still going to get reported out, and they're going to various places, and they're going to reflect on us. And, I think there's I don't know how much has been said from the administration down to staff and down to students and out to families. But when dealing with the mental health issues and the wellness and the reducing the stressors, something has to give. And what frustrates me so much about the guidance we've received from DESE this year is there's been sort of no understanding really that something has to give, because no matter how we are, this is a more stressful year than normal. And education is not looking the same, no matter whether we're in a remote model or a hybrid model or whatever else. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think it would be important. I don't know how much it's been communicated to families, how much it's been communicated to students, how much has been communicated to teachers. Don't worry about the scores to the extent you can this year, because the mental health, the wellness, the are you okay is actually more important. And as people focus on that, they're learning the skills and the strategies that will carry them through to repair whatever educational damage has been wrought in the last year.
That was a good Tina representation. Well done, Paul Goldner. Any other comments? All right, I just like to say thanks, Kim. I mean, I know, and to all the principals, I know this is a lot to pull together in a relatively short amount of time, and I appreciate the work that everyone's gone through to pull these programs together and the interventions and the work and kind of get that going. So I very much appreciate that. All right, food services program update.
Great. So we're going to kick this over to Kyle. So thank you to Kim for that update. Certainly, as everyone said, lots of work, right? The information we share here is the tip of the iceberg, as Kim said, in regards to what actually goes on. So certainly thank you to Kim, but to everyone else who's been involved in these processes. So moving to a financial discussion, kicking it over to Kyle in regards to an ongoing discussion about food services that we've been having with Finance Subcommittee each week. Or each month, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Brian highlighted, each month at Finance Subcommittee, amongst other things, we cover the financial results of the food service operations and quick backgrounds on those operations from a financial perspective, designed to break even every year. Some on a month-to-month basis, there might be some timing differences, but ultimately that's been our experience is at the end of the year, we've pretty much broken even with a slight deficit. The revenues from those operations in the past have been a mix of school lunch receipts from students who are participating, as well as state and federal grant receipts for students who qualify for either free or reduced lunch. This year is very different. The entire state is now in a program where all students qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we've gotten into a position where, because we're in a hybrid learning model, less students or hybrid or full remote, there's less students in the building, so less students are purchasing lunch. We've been monitoring this deficit. As of the end of November, it was about $65,000 in the red. At the end of December, it's increased to about $90,000. Participation is key in this fund. In October into November, we were really seeing increased participation. Our monthly revenues were getting to 70 to 80,000. Since we've shifted to a full remote option for the month of December, revenues were about 55,000. Just to kind of give some comparison of this year versus last year. At this point last year, we were averaging about 17 to 18,000 meals or lunches served per month. At this point in time, we're averaging about 10,000. So I do want to mention that the position we're in here at Triton is no different than any other community in the state. Everybody's going through the same challenge because just serving less meals. So wanted to, where this deficit has been growing, and certainly it's becoming a financial constraint, we wanted to bring it to the full committee to make you aware of it. Looking out where this deficit will land at the end of the year is challenging. Right now, while we're in full remote learning model, our costs are, I wouldn't say fixed, but our costs normally would average about $100,000 a month. And just because we're serving less meals, it's not a linear relationship with our costs versus revenue. So kind of like with the challenge we have with student enrollment, just because you have less students doesn't mean you can have less staff, like that exact linear relationship. So right now in a full remote, we're losing about 30,000 a month. If we shift to a hybrid, it all depends on how many people participate. Certainly, we are not going to break even. We won't, even in the hybrid model, we just don't have enough students in the building. We've had enhanced efforts of marketing this program, getting the word out. I know on the Salisbury Police Facebook page, we let everybody know about the program. We've been issuing memos or including in the weekly updates. I think the community needs to really understand that this is a benefit for all students. It's not a case where there's a limited amount of free meals. It's actually, everybody gets free meals, and the more people that participate in it, it's just bettering the district's financial position. So I think if we continue those efforts to get the word out. So worst case scenario, if we stayed in a full remote for the rest of the year, that deficit could head up to about $200,000. I think if we, looking at the remaining months of the year, if we are in a hybrid model and we see an increased participation, maybe a loss of 10,000 a month. So where we're at 90 right now, maybe that is about 140,000. We've been planning for this to a degree. We have savings in certain areas, like the July health insurance bills. Everybody was given a 50% premium holiday. So that saved the district about $200,000. There's also been budgeted positions that haven't been filled, like we've been talking about all along. And then also the second round of federal stimulus funds that look like they're on their way, that was voted and approved in December. The number that we're looking at for that, or I should say, all the indications point that this deficit would be we could use those funds for. So again, where this is a significant amount, we wanted to make the full committee aware of it. I'll leave it at that. If I can add one more thing too, yeah. I do want to compliment all the food service staff who have been an incredible job navigating, getting meals out. I think the last counts we're still servicing 40,000 lunches so far this year. Lucinda Ward, our food service director, has been advocating for the district, looking for grant opportunities. Brian, I won't steal his thunder in the superintendent's report there, but we were awarded some grant funding, which is phenomenal. That helps our operations so that we can continue to service more meals, serve more students. So just a quick snippet on that.
Thanks, Kyle. And I absolutely agree with you. Food services has been wonderful through all this. So any questions in the committee on this? This was just an update. Finance subcommittee will continue to monitor this on a monthly basis. Paul Mayette.
Not a question. I just wanted to add on to what Kyle said, because in addition to the logistics, my kids have raved about the food. So I would love to get them to talk about the food we serve them in these terms. So she's done a great job on that end as well. All of them have.
I agree.
It's great to hear.
Yeah. So I just want to reiterate what Kyle said. So we've absolutely looked at adjusting the operation to kind of right size it. And there's no commensurate relationship there. So like Kyle said, we could lose 12 students, but you lose them from several classrooms. So you actually can't trim staff to offset those costs. We've looked at it, continue to look at it. You're talking about peanuts because there's still a large number of meals being produced. So it's, we'll continue to monitor it, but I just, to Kyle's credit and him working with Lucinda, two of them are doing a fabulous job on just maintaining that and monitoring it and doing everything we can while making sure the program still runs. Like Kyle said, you don't have to be a Triton student. If you live in the towns and you're between the ages of 0 and 18, you qualify for 10 meals a week. So continuing to get that word out is important in every way we can.
Yeah, and I guess along with it too, there were a number of organizations that have already shared out that information, which has been great. Kyle mentioned the police department. I've seen Cut and Gill House put it out. I've seen the library put it out. So those have been some great places to, kind of see that message amplified that, anybody, it's here for everybody. So, yeah. All right, thank you, Kyle. Moving on to the monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
So I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but there might be some things in here that you have questions about. Certainly, I feel like it's a little more loaded than it might normally be with some kind of big topics. Reminder for the community, just reminding everyone, right? The more we mask up and distance ourselves, the better chance we have towards shifting towards hybrid. So this is a partnership and we're all on the ship together. Just gave a quick update on where we were and prior to tonight, where we were intending to shift back to hybrid learning. Obviously that adjusted tonight. Winter athletics, this is just an update that we moved forward with I don't remember the last meeting when it was, but you didn't feel the need to take a formal vote, so left that in my hands working with the principal and the AD in regards to spectators at events. It's a mix across the Cape Ann League. It ebbs and flows on a daily basis. So at the moment, certainly swim is very restrictive based on being at the YWCA. Our students ski. I think we have 6 student athletes who are skiing on the co-op Haverhill team. And that's obviously at Bradford. It's a very different situation, but for the gymnasium, at Triton, as well as the Graph Rink. We've agreed, and it's a kind of a Cal agreement, that we're going to start with attempting to have senior parents, that any senior student athlete can have 2 spectators. Obviously that varies. You saw the story in the paper, that was just 1 set of parents for the girls basketball team, and it's a larger group for different teams. So as we can adjust, we will, but at this point we're taking a very cautious approach to make sure that we maintain the safety of those programs. Charter and choice enrollments, some very, very, very positive news. So we, in essence, or in summary, I should say, Kyle has been carrying a $125,000 deficit in his reports to the finance subcommittee each month that you see in your packets. We're meeting again, I think, next week. So we'll be updating, but we got our preliminary numbers for charter and choice. In short, we had, we knew we had lost significant numbers of students this year. We knew that the majority were going to homeschooling very clearly at an interim basis, or off to private schools. And many of the families have indicated that's on an interim basis until we're back to normal learning. And so we weren't entirely sure with charter or choice, because we don't have all of those, sometimes those students we've never seen before and show up on our rosters. But long and the short of it is that our charter numbers is about 55,000 less than we budgeted. So that's very good news. And combined, you remember, we have charter charges for students leaving, and then we have charter revenue for students coming in. And net, the 2 of those, even though one's a revolving and one's general fund, the net is about 55,000. So rather than a deficit of 125,000, those are actually going to break even. So when we start to talk about, or continue talking about, I should say, those food service deficits, or its new COVID relief, or ESSER funding of 800,000, there's certainly other positive news in regards to where we were looking at those offsets. So certainly a very, very positive and welcomed bit of news. Again, that's preliminary data. That's not confirmed until the final payment in June. That's a real-time current year reimbursement program for both of those. So food service grants, as Kyle mentioned, you so can steal my thunder. We awarded 2 grants, actually 1 through the state that Our Neighbors Table organized. Lindsay Haight, who's the executive director there, went with they call it a hub and spoke approach, looking at the entire region and attempting food security and efforts there. So collectively, it was a $174,000 grant to the region, of which, God love Lucinda, she was aggressive and shot for the moon, and they funded almost the entirety of what she asked for. So about 25,000 from Our Neighbors Table in regards to what was allowed versus what we asked. And then another 4,000 that came through Project Bread. So that is buying equipment that is going to be very useful. What was it? Hot boxes and mobile units, as far as storing and transferring and transmitting food and keeping it hot. All those yummy meals, like Paul noted. So all of those components are usable afterwards. So again, Lucinda's always thinking strategically. This $30,000 is spent and helps real time, but it fills a need long term when we're back to normal operations. So again, that is very positive news. Obviously, thank you to Project Bread, the state, and all the funding, and Lucinda. But Lindsay Haight, time and time again, deserves shout outs, because her work with Our Neighbors Table is phenomenal, and the work she does in the region and organizing a lot of different groups that are doing some amazing work. So many kudos all around. Pine Grove Principal Search, we spent the entirety of the day today doing interviews. We had 14 total applicants. The group selected 6 to interview today. 1 candidate backed out last minute. And so over the coming days, I will be able to give a more comprehensive update as that group's work is completed. But I'm very pleased with the candidates. We had a great candidate pool come forward. And so that was very good news, so that we had a good candidate pool to choose from. So more in the coming days on that. Remote Academy update, nothing, actually the exact same number that I reported to you, or slight different that I reported to you last month, but actually the exact number as it was on October 7th when we shifted. to hybrid learning. So there's been some ebbing and flowing, 4 more at the elementary, 1 less at the middle, 3 less at the high school overall, but the same number of 264 students. This was as of last week. My guess is that's changed 1 or 2 here or there over the course of the time since I wrote this report. But we continue to make adjustments, and Kim has done yeoman's work working with the remote academy teachers, specifically K through 8, in adjusting class sizes or staffing for class sizes. And so that has been a challenge, but at this point we have been able to adapt for the capacities that we need. But it is, I don't know if you've seen many districts that have actually made one of their district or building administrators a remote academy principal or what have you. So we have not done that, but quietly and valiantly, Kim and Anna Bates, the 2 of them together, have tag teamed to do a lot of work in coordinating that. So phenomenal educators working in the remote academy, and certainly Kim and Anna, thanks to you for all the work in making that a reality. Student learning time regulations. This was a regulation. We could talk about this for about 3 hours. So in essence, time on learning, we always talk about time on learning, was adjusted in light of COVID. Remember our discussion back at the end of last year where I remember emailing parents and saying, we're going to get some pretty clear, straightforward expectations from the Department of Ed. So it started with, it's going to be prescriptive. And then by July, it was, good luck, you're on your own. The Board of Ed decided that on December 18th was the right time to finally put some parameters in place 6 months into the game here. There was a hint of this. Certainly, we knew that something might be coming down the pike. Long and the short of it is, over a 2-week period, they asked for all data for grade 1, 4, 7, and 10. So this was submitted, I forget the exact date, it was early November. We were currently in hybrid. We were asked to submit on our current plan. I submitted the survey data based on our current plan. We had to have an average of 35 hours of live learning, live instruction over a 2-week period across all grade levels. So I wasn't able to print off what I submitted. I don't know their exact math and how they did all of that. But the 35 hours is where we are. So the data that I submitted based on our hybrid model put us at the 35 hours for our hybrid model. So you can actually click on that Tableau sheet, or the link there rather. And then the other caveat is if you are in a remote model, that it's an average of 40 hours over 2 weeks of live instruction. And if you look at it's page 91 of 101, actually no, from the page it's 92 of 101. That first bullet, it says counts as synchronous instruction is live online classes where the teacher is leading the whole class, kind of the most basic definition of streaming. And then live streaming of instruction, live in-person instruction accessed by remote students, or small group instruction while students are learning remotely. And it talks about basically where a teacher is present with a student. So anytime where teachers are working small groups, available for students, right? So there's many teachers who kind of work with a group, and then some kids are working and then they're there, so they know they can raise a hand and get the teacher remotely still. All of that counts as live instruction. What doesn't count, that final bullet, is office hours. I remember that was the term we used in the spring, where teachers would be available if you wanted to contact them. There has to be an open line of communication. So based on the questions that were asked and that I answered back in November, we passed the test, if you will, at 35 hours. And then I didn't submit, nor was I allowed to submit for our remote model, but I would say that we would well exceed the 40 hours in a remote model, because in a remote model, we tend to have even more extensive streaming and live instruction on a almost complete day. It obviously varies from kindergarten through 12th grade, but far more streaming. So we would easily make that 40. And I don't, again, I didn't do the math, but we would well exceed the 40 in a remote model. So there are districts that are scrambling. If you didn't have If you didn't meet that 35-hour threshold, you have until Tuesday, the 19th, to put that into place, which is the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So we did pass that test on that first pass. And I honestly don't know what will happen from here, right? The first test will be the roughly 30% of districts that needed to make adjustments, but we didn't have to make any adjustments. So this is a wait and see. If something changes, I will certainly let you know, but I don't anticipate any further action that we're going to need to take on this. So I should pause there and just see if there's any questions on that or anything else that I said.
Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none.
Roland. Kim referenced a couple of these assessment changes. So again, as you approved last week, January 20th to 22nd are now full days for the high school, no midterm exams. Middle school is still having half days. So next week they will, well, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will still have half days. Conferences are being set up as we speak, all remote, all traditional class or all traditional conferences. As Kim mentioned to you, we're not doing interim progress reports. We did just do conferences and report cards before the holidays at the elementary level. And teachers have been and will continue to be in contact with any families where they're concerned about a student's progress. And then as I believe Kim mentioned this, that we're not doing the mid-year writing benchmark assessment. To Paul Goldner's point, where do you go? There he is. Paul Goldner's point about MCAS. I was actually just literally talking about that with the leadership team. And one of the greatest challenges right now in leading is making sure that we're moving the district forward, but also giving people the freedom to not care about assessments, right? This is a year that we're, if we get to the end of the year and we have 2,300 students that are excited about returning in September, then we are in a market advantage to be ready to start learning and filling those gaps in September. If we've disenfranchised half of our population and education, September is going to be even more challenging than we know it will be right now. So certainly the ability to have a little bit more of that messaging now that Paul referenced, of being able to say, look, it's important, but this year, not a top priority. This we'll have to wait and see with a change in federal administration, new Secretary of Education. There is anticipation. If I talk to some individuals at the Department of Ed, they see it's just a matter of time before the waiver comes through. Right now, we know that it's relaxed. If you look at page 94, you can see that they've modified the competency determination for the class of 2021. So there's other avenues, other assessments that students can take to earn their CD if they find themselves in that situation. I believe we had one student where we had in that situation last year. So it's generally very small numbers who are affected. You can see for 3 through 8, which is the large bulk of students, it talks about each student is going to take only a portion of the MCAS assessment for each subject. We don't know what that looks like. That will be very interesting. Do they give us the full test and say just do pages 10 and 20 or 10 to 20, or is it a completely modified test? So we don't know exactly what that will look like yet. The third bullet, that grades or the assessments will be reported, which is not great news, but there won't be any accountability decisions made based on the information. So that's a step in the right direction. No reporting whatsoever would be even a better step and further in the right direction. And then some extended window for the access testing to the end of the year in the biology test, allowed to move that out to June. So what I will say is this, and this is right out of the commissioner's mouth, the Mass Board of Education, Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, is very, very keen on the MCAS testing. So the commissioner with superintendents is very, very vocally saying he's advocating for a reduction or elimination of. And there are many at the Department of Ed, like I said, who are, kind of in the assessment office. So I had a conversation with one, and they literally talked about it as a matter of time before that waiver comes through. There are some who are saying, be cautious, because even if a federal waiver comes through, our local state Board of Education may not be so likely to waive that. So we'll have to wait and see. At this, I would say this is a good step in the right direction. We still have some work to do to get to the point where we can say, let's focus on the time we have with the students in front of us and not worry about assessments, and certainly not MCAS assessments. So stay tuned on that, step in the right direction, more work to do. Weekly dashboard review, we've talked about that. Change in the influenza vaccination. We were due to have to exclude students from school as of January 1st of 2021. That was extended. That was by executive order of the governor. That's not a federal requirement. So there are certainly challenges to that. There are individuals who have challenged that, and that would, or any medical or religious exemption would apply. So we were due to have to exclude students who didn't have a flu vaccination on file or a documented medical or religious exemption on file by December 31st. That's been pushed out to February 28th. So effective March 1st, we technically do need to exclude students that don't have their flu vaccination on file. I would say, or in speaking with the nurses, anywhere from 20 to 50% of the populations, depending on the school, is still outstanding. Certainly the focus has been on what we know the nurses are doing 24/7, is focusing on COVID. But that is certainly something we will continue to push to make sure that we have the documentation of the vaccination or the exemption, so that we're not forced into a position of having to make a decision of excluding students by the time we get to March 1st. Fiscal 22 budget process. I know we talked about this kind of informally, but just to formally put in writing to set expectations. So we agreed that we're not doing the normal principals, each submitting their own school-based budget and technology budget and special ed budget. And we are putting together a single workbook that we'll present to you 2 weeks from today. Is that right? Yeah, the 27th. That will include kind of our process, what we're doing, focusing on a level services budget. What does it cost to take the current services and move them into next year? The usual data that you see in schools about class sizes and all that information isn't possible this year. We're going to use a September of 2020 assumption in regards to student enrollments, right? We know we lost a significant number of students, and we expect that those students are coming back. There will be the normal student enrollment fluctuations, but we can't adjust for our current population, because of when all those students come back, as we assume, we would have adjusted staffing down, and then we have those students returning. So we're going to move forward assuming that what we started the year with back on September 1st, as we were coming into the school year before all those changes happened, that's what we'll be using as the basis for our budget. So we won't be able to project enrollments yet. So it's going to be a little more flying blind than we normally would be. But the focus will be on the current budget and bringing this into next year. And then from a district perspective, all the principals will be there talking about what the priorities are. Are there special ed programs that we need to put in place? One of the things we keep talking about is technology. We brought in 1,000+ new devices. We need to start talking about how to support those devices. So a few key strategic district-wide initiatives that we would be talking about funding, but overall it's going to be a single package, the majority of which will be the regular cost of doing business, contracts, COLAs, step lane, all those, the big ticket items, health insurance, and then some information. By the 27th, we're also going to have the governor's first pass at Chapter 70. So that'll give us some good information. I'm in my mind assuming a level funded Chapter 70 figure, but we'll also have a first take at regional transportation, circuit breaker, and all those as well. So that's the plan. Any questions about that? No. All right. I'll just keep rolling. So Chromebooks, we did get the 950 back in, and those are rolling out. Because we've been in remote, oddly, you would think that's when everyone needs the devices. Actually, there are many students who have devices at home and actually use the school device when they're moving back and forth. So once we have students back into hybrid, we anticipate that that will pick up, and those have been moved, supplies or resources have been moved into the school, so that in working with principals on making sure how we hand those out and keep track of all that information, and we track asset tag information and get a signed agreement. Pooled testing, I'm not going to say a ton about yet. I did participate in the webinar yesterday. The nurses were in and out. They were all obviously in their schools and dealing with many school nurse things. And so there's a recording that was already posted. I took a few pages of notes along with the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides. We're scheduled to meet on Friday to talk through the logistics of that. I will say at first pass, it's very promising. It's a $5 per swab, which is by far the cheapest I've seen. You know, I think Narissa, you had noted that 18 was kind of the cheapest you had seen. So we're talking about, you know, less than a third of the previous testing. But just so that people are aware of what pool testing is, so it's we would determine the pool size anywhere between 10 and 25 individuals. You test the pool altogether. These would be anterior nasal swabs. So this is not posterior. This is not the tickle your brain. Seen some of those videos, and I've not yet been that kind of tested, but watched some videos, and it's astounding how far back it goes. But these are the majority of students would be able to self-administer. It's a swab for, I think, 5 seconds each nostril, put it in a tube. Everyone in that pool puts their swab in the same tube. So likely that would be cohorts in classrooms. The test is then run on that single, treating all 10, 12 of them as a single test. If that pool tests positive, then we have a reflex testing and follow-up testing to figure out who was it in that pool that was positive. So the state suggestion now is actually using that Binax Now testing, which is an antigen test. They spent considerable time talking about the fact that antigen tests, by and large, are not the gold standard, right? PCR tests are the standard. So if we're PCR testing in a pool, and then we know there's a positive there, then by using an antigen test as that reflex, as that responsive testing, it actually greatly increases its effectiveness because you're doubling the analysis, right? You already know someone is. So that's their suggestion, and obviously we can get the Binax Now testing at no cost. So, you know, rough math, if we're talking about just the supplies, we're talking about in the vicinity of 13 to 15,000 per test administration. The Department of Ed would cover the first 6 weeks of the program costs, and then we would be responsible if we chose to continue with the program beyond that. So that 13 to 15 assumes that everyone, every student, every faculty and staff is testing. This would not be required. This is voluntary, but for those districts who spoke about it, Watertown, Salem, Malden, I'm trying to think who else it was, that spoke about it, said that their response rates initially, it's grown steadily, that the majority are in the upper 80s to low 90s of families and faculty and staff, and staff even higher percentages that are participating in this weekly testing. And that the overall response is that it is not easy, right? There's a lot of logistics. The swabbing is the easy part. It's what you do with the data, follow-up, tracing, that gets very challenging. So the first discussion I need to have is with the nurses and what our capacities are. They're tapped out. I mean, I can tell you that right now. They're doing this all day long, and then they're doing it at night as well, as far as the follow-up and communicating with families. So Department of Ed talked about, no detail yet, but talked about being able to, whomever gets that contract for the testing, that those sites would have options to contract for staffing to be the folks who come on site to administer the tests. The description, most of the schools said you can test an entire classroom in 5 minutes. It's that simple. But having staff to the right now it would be, we're doing the administration of the test, we're transporting to the lab. I think it's all those logistics that there might have to be an additional assumption of cost, that if it's to determine whether it's a program that we can support. So Kyle mentioned we are anticipating an official award of our ESSER 2, which is anticipated in the vicinity of $819,000. So that is not a small amount of money. And I think certainly when we talk about what is the number, I don't even know what to guess the number would be as far as the staffing resources, but that's going to be something that we enter into the mix there as far as a viable candidate for spending some of that money, because I think that it's a when, not if, that we need to have this in place for us to be able to move forward. So that was the last thing I had in there, and then the regular personnel report. So any questions about anything that I had included there?
Just quick question on the testing. Does participating in the 6-week state program require that we continue beyond that? And therefore, does that lock us into spending our own money down the line?
Great question. So there's two sides to that. No, it doesn't lock you. It would not lock us into continuing. Likewise, if we chose not to participate, we could still access the state contract and pricing after the fact, after the initial 6 weeks. So if we decided we weren't going to do this until March 1st, and we weren't, my understanding is if we say we want to, we will be able to. I don't think it's a competitive process. But if we chose to, if we said we can't figure it out, and then we did figure it out down the line, we would have access to those contracts, those agencies that are doing the testing, the labs, at the contract pricing, even if we didn't participate from the beginning.
Police, we'll come to you in a second, Aaron.
So Brian, on the personnel report, if you could take a peek, just in the middle school. I thought that person was a full-time district employee.
Retired.
Retired, okay. How long?
I don't remember when. She was on months ago,
Okay.
retired, and came back as an interim stopgap. We're already pulling people out of retirement.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Aaron? Oh, sorry. Aaron? You're muted. There you go.
So as you're going through the process of looking through the testing plans and such, do we know what it would mean in terms of if somebody in that group of however many swabs get tested, do they all go out in quarantine because somebody is positive, or does it immediately trigger the next test, and is that result immediate? And then along the lines of the cost of the secondary testing, are we assuming that cost as well?
So the Binax Now, which is the test that the Department of Ed received from the federal government, and we did not participate in. So that is no cost. And what they're suggesting is that's the follow-up reflex testing, is using the Binax Now. That's a 15-minute response time. So it's only an antigen test, It's an antigen test. So again, back to what I was saying about, there are many people who say that antigen tests they're not the gold standard like a PCR is. But if we know there's someone positive in a pool of 10 in a single pool, the next step would be to use the Binax Now antigen test. That's a 15-minute response. In most cases, the folks who have gone through this program and piloted this, and I think one of the things that Russell Johnston, the senior associate commissioner, said was, we're inviting you to be on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge, because there are districts who have already done this and piloted it. Most of the time, the Binax will then identify who the positive is, and it's never a bad. It seems to be that most will then recommend that you go and do a normal full tickle the brain PCR test. But The Binax,
For every one of them though, for the
no, for the
just
positive.
the positive. And if we don't, like you just said, there, it's for the most part gives you the positive. What happens when it doesn't?
So then it literally talked about the fact that you'd work with your local health officials and we would have to determine what we would want to do with that. So if there was a positive PCR, that could certainly be a false positive. Their suggestion is if there's anyone who is in the pool and asymptomatic can come in the building to take that follow-up antigen test, the Binax test. And if they're negative, they return, right? No impact. If they're then positive on the Binax, my understanding with talking with Krista and Joe Levette is that they have to be considered a presumptive because it's an antigen. So an antigen makes you a presumptive positive, a PCR is a positive. So then the follow-up would be that individual who is then, could be more than one, who is positive on the antigen test is then quarantined and is the one that goes out, gets the testing and follows the protocols.
So do we need a holding area for the students as they're coming back in for the Binax test?
So we would bring them into the building, specifically just into the nurse's office. And again, if they were symptomatic, they would be out anyway. So if they're in the pool and positive but asymptomatic, they can be brought into the building simply to test and to leave.
Okay.
Or
so they would have to be.
Or brought into the test, and if they're negative, they stay. So we would have to work through the logistics of when the timing and how that would all work, but we'd be doing it likely over 2 days for the 2 cohorts. And if we tested cohort A on Thursdays, we would know their results on Saturday at the latest. If we tested cohort B on Fridays, we would know by Sunday morning, afternoon at the latest. And that would allow us to at least stop anyone in those positive pools and make a determination.
I think the important thing to remember about this is it's surveillance testing specifically. So these are individuals that typically wouldn't be getting tested otherwise, right? They don't have a travel history, they don't have symptoms or anything like that. So anything you're picking up here is probably a bonus to what you would normally find. And this goes to the point of, in particular, the CDC has been making lately, that it's a lot of your pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, cases where spread is happening, that it's undetected. And that's what you would hopefully be, it's always, there's going to be spaces in between if you're doing this once a week, right? But there's, the hope would be that you're picking up more of those cases, definitely, than you are now, even if you're not getting them all.
Right. And I'm curious, I'm more curious about the waterfall effects of it, of what the other things that we would have to be concerned about, just to try and keep it on the radar, including the Binax test is completely, absolutely 100%. They're covering the cost of it. Like
it's instant. It's literally you swab and you put it in the container and then it closes and you set it on the counter for 15 minutes. And so that there is no processing. The biggest frustration with that is you then have medical waste on site.
Right. So do they cover the cost of the medical waste or the supplies?
That's not significant. I mean, that's not astronomical cost. It's a process we have to figure out. But all the supplies and everything, yes. PPE, we would have to incur the cost of that. So that's one of the, again, anyone who's handling specimens in this, whether it's the Binax or otherwise, has to have full PPE. So it's a fit tested N95, eye protection, shield, gown. So it's full PPE to handle any specimens. So those are, as I was saying, those are all the logistics we have to figure out, what do we have the capacity for?
Right.
The state will cover for those 6 weeks the cost of all of the Binax is free, right? That's a federally supplied product.
Yeah.
The new testing, it would be all the materials, the vials, the tubes for the pools. It would be all the processing, customer support, analysis. We have to do the collection get the collection, courier it to the lab. And so that's the piece that I'm reaching out to. We don't have the capacity, right? There aren't staff who can do that. So is that something where it's cheaper to hire people, or is it something where for a fee through whoever the lab or company is, we can that's a software service that we can.
So you're still trying to determine what the fee would be after the 6 weeks are over, is what I'm hearing.
That's what I was saying. I have no idea
Okay.
of that. That's all.
Yep.
I submitted interest to the Department of Ed saying, yes, we're interested in hearing more. Got to talk through the logistics with the nurses on Saturday or Friday. And then I don't know what the next step is. Wait to hear more detail from the Department of Ed in regards to what the specifics are.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Erin. Any other questions on that? Or on anything in Brian's report? All right, seeing none, thank you, Brian, for your very comprehensive this month report. So next item is subcommittee reports and action items. Policy and advocacy, Linda could not make it tonight. I know they have not met. They were originally, she was originally thinking about meeting tonight and then put that off. So I don't believe there are any updates. Looking at other members of that committee, no. Finance, Caitlin.
I think the big thing that we talked about in finance, Kyle already talked about, which was food services and the situation there. So I'll just reiterate that it's really important that if you are a human, ages 0 to 18, living in Newbury, Salisbury, Rowley, we ask you to please sign up to get 10 free meals a week, and they are good. And the snacks are nice, and there are pictures online. So take a look at them. And then if you have other questions, Lucinda Ward is a wonderful human and she will help you through the process.
Well put. I think you should run an ad of some sort. Caitlin, Triton Food Services spokesperson.
Get right on it.
Thanks, Caitlin. Paul Lee's personnel and negotiations.
Yeah, we haven't met since December 9th. We met on that night. The minutes were in your package. We've approved those minutes. Brian, I think the only thing, we don't have a meeting planned, but our next step is to meet with the TRTA Section B. Does that sound right?
No, AFSCME groups. So B is the IAs, but yeah, so all the AFSCME custodial, head custodial, and cafeteria workers are under AFSCME, and so their contract expires on June 30th. So I have reached out to the area, the state AFSCME head, and he is working to coordinate with the stewards of each of our unions to find a time that works mutually, so he can go back to back with each of the three of them. So I had asked if we could get a date on the calendar for next week. I'm hoping that's still the case. He's still working on confirming that, but he's a little busy these days apparently. So I'm pinging him every few days.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Anything else we need to cover, Brian, before we adjourn?
No.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Please. Anybody? Second?
I'll second.
Paul Matt? All right, it's Paul's tonight. All right, any discussion? Okay, I need a roll call vote, please. Erin?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen? Maureen? There she is.
Sorry, my computer keeps going in and out. I don't even know what you're making a motion on, but I'm assuming this is to adjourn.
Adjourning. Yes.
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paul Lees?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well. And I apologize, Kaylee. Did you want to follow up with anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. Since we ruled that we're staying remote for another week, are we leaving all like extracurriculars and athletics as they currently stand running wise?
That would have had to be motioned, yeah, as part of that if it was going to
So
change.
it's still, nothing's changed from it. Okay.
Correct.
It's like I've been seeing like people are starting to email me asking about it.
I know how that goes. There is no rest. All right, excellent. Thank you all for your time, and we'll make sure we get a agenda out for next Thursday, and I will see you then if I don't see you before. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Everyone. Have a great night.